Hogwarts. Who hasn't collected a Horcrux? Chapter 26. At night, when everyone in the dormitory was asleep, William suddenly got up from the bed. He quietly dressed, took his wand, tiptoed through the room, walked down the spiral staircase, and entered the Gryffindor common room. There was still some embers flickering in the fireplace, and the common room was silent, which made William, who was preparing for a night walk, feel a little lonely. William came to the portrait hole, pushed open the portrait of the fat lady, and then went out of the hole. There was no one in the portrait at this time. The fat lady went to visit late at night. Maybe she thought that no one would go in after curfew. The corridor was not pitch black. Instead, beams of moonlight came in from the window. Even ordinary people could barely see the nearby scenes. But William had a gift for night vision, which made him see the night as day, and the entire corridor was clearly visible. He was now on the 8th floor, and according to William's memory in his previous life, the room of requirement was also located on the 8th floor of Hogwarts Castle. This magical room is opposite the tapestry of the troll beating Barnabas with a stick on the 8th floor of the castle. When the user concentrates on the required venue and walks through that wall 3 times, a very smooth door will appear on the wall, and then you can enter the room of requirement. After William sorted out his thoughts, he began to wander around the 8th floor of the castle. He had to pretend that he had discovered the room of requirement by accident and not be too deliberate. In addition to the Gryffindor common room, the 8th floor of the castle also has Professor Flitwick's office, the headmaster's office, the advanced arithmancy research laboratory and other rooms. So William walked very carefully along the way, and he really kept his eyes and ears open. If there was any movement, he would hide immediately. During this period, he also found the tapestry of the troll beating Barnabas with a stick, but he did not show any abnormality and walked straight through here. William walked around the 8th floor, and when he returned to the door of the Gryffindor common room, he found that the fat lady in the portrait had not returned. Well, I can't go back now, so I might as well walk around a bit more. William sighed in a pretentious manner, turned around and wandered around the 8th floor again. This time he was a bit unlucky, as he had only taken a few steps when he heard Filch's voice at the corner of the corridor. Sniff around, my dear, we must not let go of those guys who violate the school rules. Filch's gloomy and sticky voice made William frown. But he immediately thought of a good idea. If he used the excuse of avoiding Filch and accidentally found the room of requirement in a panic, then everything would make sense. What a wonderful idea. Just do it. William pretended to be panic and bumped into the armor on the side of the corridor. The silent corridor suddenly clanged and the sound spread far away. Filch obviously heard it, and he shouted to his cat Mrs. Norris. My dear, there must be someone ahead, hurry up and chase him, I can't let the kid run away, I must catch him. He didn't say the rest, because he was forbidden to hurt students due to the tolerance of Headmaster Dumbledore. You know, Filch had the right to whip students who violated school rules before. He would even hang students upside down in his office, lock them up in a small dark room, etc. William heard the noise on the other side of the corridor and immediately ran in the opposite direction, but he always kept a moderate speed. He didn't want Mrs. Norris to catch up with him, but he also wanted her to catch up with him. In this way, he passed the tapestry of the troll hitting Barnabas 3 times, and at the same time, he was thinking about finding a place to hide something. When he passed by the 3rd time, a door suddenly appeared on the wall opposite the tapestry. William pretended to be panicked, pushed the door open and rushed in, then quickly closed the door, and the door on the outside wall disappeared instantly and turned into a wall again. After a while, when Mrs. Norris chased after him, she couldn't see anyone at all, so she could only turn back to look for Filch. At this time, Filch was panting and couldn't even straighten his waist. You know, William took him around the 8th floor 3 times without stopping. He panted and cursed fiercely, you despicable little beast, you're lucky today. If I catch you in the future. He paused for a moment before cursing again, it must be the Gryffindor. They live on the 8th floor. They must have run back to the common room. Humph. Filch was unwilling to catch the man, but he still took Mrs. Norris and walked towards the stairs while cursing. He still had to patrol other floors. At this time, William was not panicking in the room of every request. He had a smug smile on his face, and was very satisfied with his impromptu plan. Not only did he play a trick on Filch, but he also achieved his goal. It can be said that he killed two birds with one stone. William had a very bad impression of Filch. When he was reading in his previous life, he hated Filch very much. In this life, when he came to Hogwarts, Filch was born to stand on the opposite side of the students, and William's impression of him became even more disgusted. After a moment of self-satisfaction, William began to observe the scene in front of him. He stood in a room as big as a cathedral. The objects hidden by generations of Hogwarts people piled up high walls, which looked like a city with tall buildings. The streets and alleys were filled with broken furniture, which looked shabby. These broken furniture may have been stuffed here to cover up the evidence of accidental magic, or hidden by the house elves who maintained the dignity of the castle. There were thousands of books here, which were undoubtedly banned books, books with graffiti, or stolen books. There were also winged slingshots and wolf-toothed flying saucers, some of which were still weakly hovering on the piles of forbidden objects. In addition to these things, there were broken bottles containing solidified potions, hats, jewelry, cloaks, and things that looked like dragon eggshells. William even saw some corked bottles still flashing evil light, as well as several rusty iron swords and a bloodstained axe. There was no telling how many embarrassing, bad, and even evil things of the past were hidden here. It was simply full of the evil side of Hogwarts. But for William, this place was good. Not only was there the Ravenclaw crown, but also a huge treasure. It depended on what he could dig out from it. William frowned and thought for a long time. He didn't remember the original books he read in his previous life very clearly. He might have just glanced over some trivial plots when he read the books, and now he couldn't remember them at all. But one element he remembered clearly was the broken bust of the ugly old wizard. The Ravenclaw crown should be near the bust. After all, Potter was in a hurry to collect books at that time, and it was impossible to spend much time, so the things he took at that time were all nearby and could not be too far away. Based on these elements, William began to look inside. Late at night, in the room of requirement, William felt like he was looking for a needle in a haystack. He searched for a long time, but still couldn't find any trace of the Ravenclaw diadem. Remembering that in the original book, Harry just ran in and took a diadem, and that was the Ravenclaw diadem, William smiled helplessly. Sure enough, without the protagonist's halo, it would not be so easy to find Ravenclaw's diadem. Many times, Harry would always find something by accident, and it seemed that things were always so coincidental. William understood that this was a plot specially arranged by the author when writing the book, but now this is a real world, so he could only attribute it to the protagonist's halo. However, William quickly adjusted his mood. Since there was no protagonist's halo, he would slowly look for it. Anyway, no one would find this place in the short term. Of course, William also thought that if he couldn't find it, he would have to use the big move, close the door and let Harry go. I hope that day won't come, William murmured. William looked at his watch. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning. It was time to go back tonight. Although he didn't find the Ravenclaw crown, he didn't get nothing. In the process of looking for the crown, William collected several pieces of jewelry in good condition and found 2 books that he was more interested in. Open double angle bracket Alchemy and Elemental Transformation close double angle bracket. Open double angle bracket No one knew who hid Ghost Research and Soul Magic here. No one knew whether he stole it from the library, bought it himself, or brought it from home. In short, no matter what their origins were, these 2 books were now cheap for William. He cast an invisible extension spell on his clothes pockets and put the jewelry and books he picked up into them. You know, those portraits in the corridor of Hogwarts Castle are all spies of the headmaster Dumbledore. William didn't want to be the focus of Dumbledore. After all, the White Lord is also a devil. After leaving the room of requirement, William ran to the door of the Gryffindor lounge. The fat lady had returned from visiting at this time, but she was very dissatisfied with William disturbing her late at night, and asked in a stiff tone, "Password. Dragon slag. Wrong. Huh. Not right." William frowned. It shouldn't be like this. The password was still the same when I came back at night. How come it changed after going out? Just as William frowned and thought, the fat lady suddenly said, "Huh, I was kidding you. Who asked you to disturb my rest?" Then her portrait moved away, revealing the hole behind. William was stunned. What a guy, he was taking revenge. But he did disturb the fat lady's rest. Besides, she just played a little joke, so she opened the door in the end. William apologized to her with a smile. The fat lady was immediately satisfied and smiled. It was necessary to have a good relationship with the fat lady. After all, he would often go out at night in the future and would inevitably disturb the fat lady. If the fat lady was annoyed, William would probably be really turned away. William returned to the dormitory quietly. His roommates were still sleeping soundly. Even Ron was still talking in his sleep. It sounded like he had become the captain of the Quidditch team. It was really a dream. William put the books and jewelry he brought into the suitcase, and then quickly went to bed. The next morning, William was still the first to wake up, even though he slept the latest. Get up, dress, wash, and wake up your roommates by the way, so that they won't say that William is not righteous if they are late. William, did you go for a night tour last night? Ron asked a little excitedly as he woke up. William looked at Ron in surprise and asked in a puzzled manner, why do you say that? Because when I got up to go to the bathroom last night, I found that you were not in the dormitory. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning. You must have gone out for a night out. Hearing Ron say this, William smiled and asked back, couldn't I have gone to the bathroom? Or to the common room? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Ron said firmly. Last night when I found you were not in the dormitory, I went to the common room and there was no one there. As for the bathroom, I didn't see you when I went there. So, excluding all possibilities, there is only one answer. You went on a night tour. Seeing Ron's confidence and clear analysis, William nodded in agreement. That's right, I did go out for a night out last night. Hearing William's admission, the other 4 people in the dormitory had different expressions. Neville frowned and persuaded, William, although you study well, it is against school rules to go out at night. You can't do this. Neville, although I did go out at night, I didn't violate the school rules. William said nonchalantly. Neville looked at William in confusion. William patted Neville on the shoulder and said meaningfully, Neville, you have to remember that night outings are only considered a violation of school rules if you are caught, otherwise it is not considered a violation. William's words made Harry and the others think deeply. Ron shouted excitedly, cool. William, you are right, it is not considered a violation of school rules if you are not caught. William, are you still going on a night tour tonight? Can you take me with you? I also want to go on a night tour of Hogwarts. I always hear Fred and the others talking about night tours, but I haven't experienced it yet. Without waiting for William to answer, Harry looked at William expectantly. I want to go too. William, can you take me with you? These 2 days won't work. We have astronomy class tonight and potions class on Friday morning. I don't want to be late and get scolded by Professor Snape. Let's wait until Friday night. Okay, then Friday. Harry and Ron nodded excitedly. Seamus was obviously also tempted, but after all, he had just enrolled and was still a little hesitant about breaking school rules. Neville was very conflicted and wanted to stop William and the others, but he also felt that what William said made sense. Never mind, let them be. The first class in the morning was History of Magic again. Professor Bin's voice was like magic, which made people fall asleep. William still sat with Hermione and continued to read, Ancient Runes Simple Introduction. This time Hermione was well prepared and brought a book she wanted to read, which made William a little disappointed. Ancient runes are actually ancient runes, so the book William read can also be called, Ancient Runes Simple Introduction. Ancient Runes is an elective course starting in the 3rd year of Hogwarts. This course mainly studies rune articles or runes, which are all theoretical courses. The purpose of learning ancient runes is to study some ancient magic documents. You should know that many ancient books are written in runes. If you don't understand runes, then even if the book records powerful ancient magic, you can't understand it, let alone learn it. It's like learning a foreign language. The purpose is not only the foreign language itself, but also the books and knowledge recorded in the foreign language. Although William didn't learn foreign languages very well in his previous life, he was very good in this life and learned runes easily. A day passed quickly. In today's defense against the dark arts, Professor Quirrell still performed stably, and it felt like he hadn't taken any class. In the herbology class, William pulled another root of ginger. The plant they took care of today was ginger. That's right, ginger is also a potion material. When William collected the ginger, the system immediately rang. Ding! Collect the extraordinary 1-star plant ginger, and you will be rewarded with +1 magic power, +100 galleons, and a bottle of intelligence potion. William feels that he can make a fortune by collecting these plants. He doesn't even want to bother collecting magic stones, horcruxes, etc. Of course, that's what he said, but he will definitely not give up. Reading during Dragon Boat. On Wednesday night, William and his classmates took an astronomy class. They sat in the tower late at night, holding a telescope to observe the starry sky, learning the names of different stars and the orbits of the planets. It was almost dawn when the class ended, so William was quiet and did not go out for a night tour. Harry and Ron were late for the first Transfiguration class on Thursday morning. Although William woke them up in the morning, the astronomy class was too late last night, and the two guys did not sleep well, so they took another nap. The consequences can be imagined. They originally wanted to sleep for 10 minutes, but when they woke up, it was already an hour later. When they ran into the classroom panting, Professor McGonagall stared at them with a serious face, and the sense of oppression was full. Maybe I should turn you into a pocket watch, so that at least one of you can keep time. Professor McGonagall said coldly, mocking Harry and Ron. We are lost. Harry said. Then turn it into a map. You don't need a map to go to your own seat. Harry and Ron walked to their seats awkwardly and sat down, not daring to say anything else. In today's Transfiguration class, Professor McGonagall not only explained some theoretical knowledge, but also asked them to turn matches into needles. After all, except William, none of them could do this. As for William, Professor McGonagall asked him to preview the following content by himself. Time soon came to Friday. At the Gryffindor table, William was stirring the oatmeal porridge and said to Hermione. Hermione, Professor Snape is the head of Slytherin house. I heard that he favors students from his own house. You should be careful. What are you paying attention to? Hermione asked in confusion. William looked at Hermione and said seriously, Hermione, you should understand that not all professors like students who actively raise their hands to answer questions. Especially when he is full of prejudice, the more you want to prove yourself, the more he may hate you. Hermione looked at William in a daze, not understanding why he said that. Don't teachers like good students? This is what Hermione has verified in her past school years. But William told her that this is not the case. There is another type of teacher. But Hermione wanted to say something, but at this time, the mail arrived. Hundreds of owls flew into the hall, flying around the dining table until they found their respective owners. Then they threw letters or packages into their legs. Elise also brought a letter for William, written by her grandmother Deborah. As soon as he arrived at Hogwarts, William wrote to his grandmother to report his safety, but his grandmother's reply came at this time. Maybe it was because it was too far away, or Elise was delayed on the way. Anyway, this was the 5th day since William sent the letter. William did not rush to open the letter, but fed Elise some toast first. Elise cried with satisfaction, then flew back to the owl house and went to sleep with other owls on campus. William opened the letter and read it carefully. Grandmother Deborah said that she had known about it and asked William to study hard at Hogwarts. After that, there was a long paragraph of caring words, telling William to take care of his body, not to get sick, and eat on time. The kind of care and warmth between the lines made William warm in his heart. Hermione saw William's expression and asked curiously, William, who gave you the letter? It's my grandma. William had a warm smile on his face, which made Hermione a little dazed. Hearing that it was a letter from William's grandmother, Hermione was immediately envious and a little regretful. If she had known earlier, she would have bought an owl so that she could write letters to her parents. But at that time, she was busy buying books and thought that an owl was unnecessary. It's too late to regret now. William noticed Hermione's expression and asked softly, what's wrong? Do you miss your parents? Hermione's voice was a little low. You can also write to them. I'll ask Elise to deliver the letter for you. William patted the girl's furry head and whispered to comfort her. Really? I'll write to them now. Hermione's voice suddenly rose, and she began to look for parchment and quills in a hurry. She looked so anxious that she really missed her parents. However, William reached out and held her down, and persuaded her. Hermione, there is no rush to write a letter. You have plenty of time to write a letter, but if we don't go to class now, Professor Snape will not be very nice. Hearing William's words, Hermione calmed down and said in awe, I'm sorry, I was too impatient. Don't apologize, I understand you. We are all children from Muggle families. It is normal for us to miss our families and parents when we come to this strange wizarding world. If you don't miss home and your parents, you're really too cold. At this moment, Hermione felt that William was so warm that she couldn't help but want to get close to him. Well, it's almost time for us to go to potions class. William looked at his watch and said. Question mark. Hearing this, Hermione quickly swallowed the soy milk in her mouth, picked up her school bag and said, I'm ready, let's go. The potions class was held in an underground classroom, which was much colder than the main building of the castle above. In addition, there were glass jars along the wall with animal specimens soaked in them, which made you shiver even more. At 9 o'clock, Snape walked into the classroom door without missing a beat. He strode towards the desk, and his speed brought up a breeze, and the black robe behind him fluttered like a big black bat. Like Professor Flitwick, Snape picked up the roster as soon as the class started. Not only that, but like Flitwick, he also stopped when he called Harry's name. Oh, yes, he whispered, Harry Potter, this is our new arrival, a very famous person. Draco Malfoy and his followers covered their mouths with their hands and chuckled. William also grinned. Snape was really a master of sarcasm. Unfortunately, this master of sarcasm didn't like Gryffindor, especially now that Harry Potter was also in Gryffindor, he disliked him even more. After calling the roll, Snape looked up at the whole class. His eyes were dark, cold and empty, making you feel like they were two dark tunnels. You are here to learn the precise discipline and strict craft of potion making. His voice was barely above a whisper, but everyone heard every word he said. Like Professor McGonagall, the head of Gryffindor, Snape, the head of Slytherin, also had an imposing aura. They could easily keep the classroom in order and make the students concentrate without daring to be distracted. Since there is no silly waving of magic wands here, many of you will not believe that this is magic. But I don't expect you to truly appreciate the beauty of the simmering crucible with white smoke and fragrance. You will never truly understand the magical power of the liquid that flows into people's veins, which makes people's hearts and minds go crazy and confused. I can teach you how to increase your reputation, brew glory, and even prevent death. But there must be one thing, that is, you are not the kind of idiots I often meet. Although Professor Snape's opening remarks were very clever and the whole class was a little excited, William still secretly curled his lips. If you were really so awesome, Harry's last name would not be Potter, but Snape. Potter. Snape suddenly said, what will I get if I add powdered narcissus roots to wormwood infusion? What root powder should be put into what solution? Harry looked at Ron beside him, who was also stunned like him. Hermione raised her arms high in the air. William was a little helpless. It seemed that Hermione didn't listen to his reminder at all. I don't know, sir. Harry said a little guilty. Snape curled his lips in contempt. Tisk, tisk, it seems that fame is not everything. Snape deliberately ignored Hermione's raised arms. Let's try again, Potter, if I ask you to find me a bazaar, where would you find it? Hermione raised her hand as high as she could without leaving her seat, but Harry had no idea what a bazaar was. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle were laughing so hard that they were shaking all over. I don't know, sir. I suppose you didn't turn the page on a single book before the start of the term, did you, Potter? Harry forced himself to look straight into Snape's cold eyes. In fact, Harry did turn the page on all the books before the start of the term, but he only turned the page once and didn't memorize much of what was inside. Snape still ignored Hermione's shaking arms, but William reached out and held Hermione's arms down. Hermione, I warned you. Although Hermione was a little unconvinced when she heard this, she finally gave up when she saw that Snape still ignored her. Snape asked again, Potter, what is the difference between Aconitum naviculatum and Aconitum wolfsbane? I don't know, Harry whispered, but I think William and Hermione know the answer, why don't you ask them? Hearing what Harry said, several students laughed. William looked at Harry speechlessly, and Harry smiled awkwardly. Snape was of course very unhappy about this. However, Hermione was held back by William and did not stand up to answer the question. But Snape is Snape, the top master of sarcasm. He didn't even look at William and Hermione, but sneered at Harry and said, "Don't disturb them talking about love, let me tell you, Potter." Hearing Snape's words, Hermione blushed and quickly pulled her arm away from William. But William didn't care, instead he wanted to thank Snape for saying it well. Narcissus root powder and wormwood can be combined to make a very powerful sleeping pill, which is a dose of life and death water. The fecal stone is a stone taken from the stomach of a goat, which has a strong detoxifying effect. As for Aconitum natans and Aconitum davidianum, they are actually the same plant, also collectively known as Aconitum. Do you understand? Why don't you write all this down? Snape asked coldly. There was a rustling sound of quills and parchment in the classroom. Amid the noise, Snape said, "Potter, Gryffindor will be deducted 1 point for talking back to the teacher." Hermione was a little indignant when she heard that Snape had deducted 1 point from Gryffindor. Snape's targeting was too obvious, so blatant and unscrupulous. "I don't know if Hogwarts has a principal's mailbox, I can complain about him." The potions class continued, but the situation of the Gryffindor students did not improve. Snape divided them into groups of 2 and began to instruct them to mix and prepare a simple potion to treat boils. As expected, Snape, who couldn't stand others doing well, separated William and Hermione into 2 groups. Hermione was in a group with Parvati Patil, who were roommates in the same dormitory. William was in a group with Dean. Although Dean was an average student, he was very sophisticated in dealing with people. He knew that William was capable, so he took the initiative to help William when preparing the potion, and the 2 cooperated well. Snape he walked around the classroom in his long black cloak, watching them weigh dry nettles and crush snake fangs. Almost all the students were criticized by Snape, except Malfoy and William. Malfoy was Snape's favorite student, and William's every step was very standard, without any mistakes, so Snape had no reason to criticize. Just as Snape was praising Malfoy and saying how perfect his method of steaming slugs with tentacles was. Suddenly, a thick acidic green smoke came out of the classroom, accompanied by a loud hissing sound. Neville didn't know how he managed to burn Seamus's crucible into a crooked piece. The potion in the crucible spilled all over the floor, burning holes in the students' shoes. When the crucible was overturned, Neville was soaked in the potion. At this time, his arms and legs were covered with red and swollen boils, and he screamed in pain. "Idiot!" Snape roared, waving his wand to sweep away the spilled potion on the ground. "I suppose you put the porcupine quills in the cauldron without removing it from the fire, didn't you?" Neville sobbed, and boils suddenly appeared on his nose. "Take him up to the hospital." Snape snapped at Seamus. He then moved around Harry and Ron as they operated next to Neville. "Potter, why didn't you tell him not to add the porcupine quills? You think his mistake will make you look good. Gryffindor lost another point because of you." Snape was not targeting Harry, he was just making trouble for Harry. Harry couldn't help but open his mouth to argue. Ron quickly stopped him and whispered, "Don't do that. I heard that Snape is very unreasonable. If you start to argue, he will definitely deduct points again." Snape saw that Potter didn't talk back, so there was no point deduction. He turned around and finally stopped beside William, watching William's actions with his eyes half closed. William didn't care that Snape was beside him, but Dean was a little nervous when Snape was staring at him. "Dean, give me the broken snake fangs," William said to Dean while looking at the mixture in the crucible. "Oh, here you go." Dean handed the crushed snake fangs to William in a panic. William took the broken snake fangs, added them to the crucible, and stirred them. Then he added the weighed dry nettles. After the mixture in the crucible turned green, William added a small amount of sponge mucus and stirred it vigorously. Step by step, William followed what Snape wrote on the blackboard. Finally, when the potion in the crucible turned pink and a puff of pink smoke came out, William knew that it was successful. When Snape turned to William again, William said, "Professor, please check it out. I think we should have succeeded." Snape stopped when he heard this, with obvious doubts on his face. Although this is a simple potion, almost no student can make this potion correctly on the first try. But when Snape got closer and smelled the smell of the potion in the crucible, and looked at the color and other characteristics, he knew that William had indeed succeeded. Well, you did succeed, but for such a simple potion, success is only natural. Although Snape said this, there was still a flash of appreciation in his eyes, which showed that he still recognized William. Then he left, without any intention of adding points to William's success. William put the prepared potion in a crystal bottle, intending to give it to Neville later, if his boils didn't heal. 10 minutes later, when the potion class was over, only William's group successfully prepared the potion. Although Malfoy was favored by Snape, he still failed to complete the preparation. After the class, everyone was in a bad mood. Gryffindor students were targeted by Snape and were in a bad mood. Lesterling students were disliked by Snape and were in a bad mood. As for why they disliked, of course it was because William, a Gryffindor student, successfully prepared the potion, while none of Lesterling's students succeeded. As the Dean of Lesterling, how could Snape not dislike them? William had no classes on Friday afternoon, so when he heard that Harry was going to visit Hagrid, he asked, "Harry, can I come with you?" "Of course, I think Hagrid will welcome you, too." Harry was in a bad mood because Snape had been harassing him for 2 classes in the morning, and Gryffindor even lost 2 points because of him. But when he thought about going to Hagrid for tea, his mood immediately improved a lot. In addition, with his 2 friends William and Ron accompanying him, Harry had long forgotten his bad mood in the morning. At about 2:50, they left the castle and walked across the lawn towards Hagrid's hut. Hagrid lived in a small wooden house on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. There was a crossbow and a pair of rubber overshoes in front of the door. The reason why William came with Harry was because Hagrid and Harry were closer. And as Harry's friend, it was easier for him to get along with Hagrid. If William came to contact Hagrid himself, I'm afraid it would take some effort to get to know him. He doesn't have so much thought and time. The 3 of them came to Hagrid's hut, and when Harry went up to knock on the door, they heard a nervous struggle and a few low dog barks from inside. Then came Hagrid's voice, "Back off, Fang, back off." Hagrid opened the door a crack, revealing his large bearded face. "Wait, stand back, Fang." Hagrid let the 3 of them in, desperately grabbing the collar of a huge black hound. There was only one room in the cabin, with hams and pheasants hanging from the ceiling, and a copper kettle boiling water in the brazier. There was also a big bed in the corner, with a quilt made of rags. Although Hagrid was guarding the Forbidden Forest, his life was still very simple, because he was a person who loved magical animals and didn't want to hurt them. "You're welcome," Hagrid said, letting Fang go. Fang immediately jumped towards Ron and licked his ears enthusiastically. It's true that the owner is like the creature. Fang is obviously like Hagrid, with a ferocious appearance, but very gentle. "This is William and Ron," Harry said to Hagrid. Hagrid was busy pouring boiling water into a large teapot and putting rock biscuits on a plate. William also took the initiative to say hello. "Hello, Hagrid, I hope I didn't disturb you by coming here." "William, hello, welcome," Hagrid said to William with a smile, looking really enthusiastic. Then he looked at Ron again, glanced at Ron's freckled face carefully, and said affirmatively, "Another little brother from the Weasley family, right? I have spent almost half of my life's energy to drive the twin brothers out of the Forbidden Forest." Hearing this, Ron smiled awkwardly. After all, Fred and the others were indeed his brothers. Hagrid's rock cake lived up to its reputation, and it was indeed as good as rocks, almost knocking out their teeth. William liked it very much, and thought that the rock cake was quite chewy. After all, his teeth were much stronger than Harry and the others. Harry and Ron pretended to like eating very much, while telling Hagrid about the scenes of the classes in the past few days. This reminded William of a joke: if you only talk while eating, then the food must be not delicious. If the food is delicious, who would care about talking? Hagrid called Filch, "That old glutton, it seems that everyone hates this guy. As for the cat, Mrs. Norris, I will introduce her to my Yaya one day. Did you know that every time I go to school, it follows me everywhere? I can't get rid of it. It must be Filch who makes it do that." Hagrid said angrily. "Maybe it likes you." William disagreed. After all, Hagrid was quite liked by animals, and Mrs. Norris was also an animal. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible," Hagrid retorted. "It looks at me like a thief, how could it like me?" Filch must have sent it to spy on me. That old is so despicable. After hearing what Hagrid said, William knew that he was overthinking it, so he nodded and said, okay. Harry talked about what happened in Snape's class again, feeling that he was being targeted. Hagrid said, Harry, don't worry, Snape probably didn't target you, because he hardly ever liked any student. Harry didn't give up and said, but he really seems to hate me. Nonsense. Why would he hate you? Although Hagrid said this, even William could see the guilt when he said this, not to mention Harry himself. Hagrid was really not good at lying. He couldn't even look Harry in the eyes. The lie was not professional at all. Maybe Hagrid also felt that his lying was not very professional, so he quickly changed the subject and asked Ron, how is your brother Charlie? I like him very much. He is very kind to animals. Charlie is studying dragons in Romania, and his mother told him that he likes this job very much. Ron shrugged. Since they were talking about animals, William also became interested and asked, Hagrid, do you like studying magical animals too? Hearing William's question, Hagrid immediately said excitedly, oh, yes, that's right, I like magical animals very much. I also have a three-headed dog named Fluffy, but Professor Dumbledore has borrowed him to guard. Oh, I can't say any more. Hagrid obviously realized that he had said something wrong and quickly covered his mouth. William naturally knew what the three-headed dog Fluffy was guarding, so he didn't ask more questions. Instead, he talked to Hagrid about other magical animals. When the two were chatting excitedly, Harry found a small piece of paper under the tea warmer. It was a report cut from the Daily Prophet. The latest report on the illegal break-in at Gringotts. The investigation into the illegal break-in at Gringotts on July 31st is still ongoing. It is generally believed that this was done by an unknown dark wizard. The goblins of Gringotts reiterated today that nothing was stolen. The underground vault that was searched by the intruder had actually been emptied earlier that day. A spokesman for the Gringotts goblins said this afternoon, there is no comment on what is stored in the vault, so please do not interfere in this matter. After reading the report, Harry remembered that that day was the day they went to Gringotts, so he said, Hagrid, the day the break-in at Gringotts happened was my birthday, and it's very possible that we were there when it happened. Hagrid was discussing magical creatures with William, and suddenly heard what Harry said, and he stammered a few words. As expected, Hagrid didn't dare to look Harry in the eye this time. He snorted and handed Harry another rock cake to hide his guilt. Harry read the report again. The vault that had been searched by the intruder had actually been emptied earlier that day. If taking away the dirty little bag meant that it had been emptied, then Hagrid had already emptied vault number 713. Could that dirty little bag be what the intruder was looking for? Harry thought as he watched. Hagrid almost leaked the secret several times in a row, and he didn't dare to keep William anymore. He filled William and the other two's pockets with rock biscuits and hurriedly sent them back to the castle, as if he was afraid that they would not leave. William did not know whether to laugh or cry. Ron looked indifferent, but Harry was full of worries and frowned. Harry felt that after having afternoon tea with Hagrid, he had to think about more questions than he had thought about in class in the past few days. Did Hagrid get the small package in time? Where is the small package now? Did Hagrid know something about Snape but was unwilling to tell him? Harry pondered, but had no clue. William was also thinking, Hagrid's rock biscuits are very famous, I wonder if they can be used as collections. It turns out that Hagrid's rock cake is collectible. However, it is only a one-star item, but the system's reward is quite interesting. In addition to the unshakable magic +1 and 100 gold galleons, the system rewarded William with a recipe book. Open double-angle bracket food or weapon. Both. When William heard the name of this book, he couldn't help but twitch his lips slightly. The book records a lot of foods that can be used as weapons, as well as how to make them, so it can be said to be a cookbook. William flipped through it curiously, and saw the name of rock cake at first glance, which can be used as both food and stone. In addition, there are baguettes, black bread, dried bonito, etc., which are all very hardcore foods. Of course, these are foods that do not involve magic, and there are also some magical foods in it. For example, exploding candy, a kind of candy that explodes. William thinks it is quite interesting. When he has time in the future, he can try to make some. William, Hermione said she wants to see you, she's waiting for you in the common room. Seamus said as soon as he returned to the dormitory. William looked up and nodded with a smile. Okay, I got it. Putting the book on the pillow, William got up and walked out of the dormitory. Walking down the spiral staircase and entering the Gryffindor common room, William took a quick glance and found Hermione's position. She was sitting in an armchair by the fireplace with a book in her hand. But her mind was not on the book at all, because when William found her, she also saw William. William, here. Hermione waved to William. William walked over and greeted her with a smile. Good evening, Hermione. Why are you looking for me so late? Is there something urgent? Hermione blushed and said hesitantly, I want to thank you for lending me your owl. You're welcome, Hermione, we are friends, and we should help each other. After lunch today, William lent his owl to Hermione. Then Hermione was busy writing letters, and William went to visit Hagrid with Harry, and the two did not meet again in the afternoon. But Hermione thanked him at that time, so why did she go to William to thank him solemnly now? Sure enough, things are not that simple. Hermione said again, William, didn't we agree to teach me training on the weekend, so I want to ask when will we start training tomorrow? Where will we train? William originally planned to tell Hermione this at breakfast tomorrow, but since she couldn't wait, it's okay to say it now. Tomorrow after breakfast, we will go to the lake for training from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, which is the same as the usual class time. What do you think? Is there anything inappropriate? Let's try to discuss it. Hermione originally thought that William had forgotten about it. After all, he just said it casually at the time. That's why she wanted to remind William, but looking at William's expression, he seemed to have already planned it and didn't forget it at all. This made Hermione feel a little ashamed. She really judged others by her own mean heart. So she nodded hurriedly. No problem, let's arrange it according to what you said, William. Okay, then we have a deal. You should go back and rest early. You still have training tomorrow. You can't do without rest. Okay, then you should go to bed early. I'll go back first. Good night, William. Good night, Hermione. The two said good night to each other and went back to their dormitories. As soon as William returned to the dormitory, Harry and Ron immediately came over. William, what time are we going out for a night out tonight? What do we need to prepare? Harry asked excitedly. 11:30, no need to prepare anything. William said calmly, not as excited as they were. Ron looked at his pocket watch, which showed that it was already 10:30. There is still 1 hour left. Time goes by so slowly. Okay, calm down and don't disturb Seamus and Neville's rest. William advised helplessly. Hearing William's words, Harry and Ron immediately lowered their voices, but their faces were still excited. I'll read for a while, you guys find something to do, or just lie down quietly for a while. William suggested to them. Then he picked up the recipe on the bedside and continued reading. Harry and Ron also followed William's example and found a book to kill time, but they couldn't calm down at all and kept repeating the first paragraph of the book. Helplessly, the two had to lie on the bed and chat in a low voice. Time ticked slowly, and it was finally 11:30. William put down the book in his hand, and Harry and Ron got out of bed instantly. The three of them tiptoed out of the dormitory, walked down the spiral staircase, and came to the common room. At this time, there was no one in the common room, and the three of them relaxed a lot. Suddenly, William heard a sound of footsteps coming from the spiral staircase. Someone is coming down. Shish. He immediately signaled Harry and Ron to stop talking, and then took them to hide. Although Harry and Ron didn't understand, they trusted William, so they didn't resist or make a sound. A moment later, they saw two dark shadows coming out of the stairs of the boys' dormitory. With the faint light from the fireplace, William and the other two recognized their identities. They were Ron's brothers, the Weasley twins, George and Fred. Ron immediately retracted his head, fearing that they would discover his figure. Because Ron was often teased by the twin brothers, he didn't dare to let them know about his night walk. Otherwise, they would definitely tell Mrs. Weasley, and then he would inevitably be scolded or even sent a howler letter. This consequence was not what Ron wanted, so he tried to hide himself as well as possible. Fred and George didn't find William and the other three, probably because this was the Gryffindor common room, and they were more relaxed. When they got out of the common room through the portrait hole, William and the other two stood up and walked out from behind the sofa. I must tell my mother about Fred and George's night outing, Ron said with some gloating. William patted his shoulder and said meaningfully, if you want to expose your night outing, then tell your mother about them. Ron was a little confused when he heard this. What does this have to do with his night outing? Seeing this, Harry explained to him, if you didn't go out at night, how would you find out about their night outing? Well, it seems to be true. Ron was somewhat speechless. Let's go, they're probably far away, let's start moving. William walked towards the portrait hole. Harry and Ron immediately followed excitedly. The three of them got out of the hole in an orderly manner. The fat lady in the portrait said, you guys are going out so late, but it will violate school rules. As long as you are not caught, it is not a violation. Ron applied what he learned and answered the fat lady with what William said before. Then, without waiting for the fat lady to say more, William and the other two left quickly. Where are we going now? Ron looked at William and Harry. Harry didn't know where to go, so he also looked at William. William, you have experience, we will listen to you. Well, I've only been at Hogwarts for less than a week, what experience can I have? William waved his hand and said. But you've been on a night tour before, so you're more experienced than the two of us. After hearing what Ron said, William nodded. It was true, but he only wandered around the 8th floor a few times last time and didn't go anywhere else. All right, then I'll take you around and maybe we can find some secrets. William hadn't thought of taking them to the room of requirement now. He hasn't found the Ravenclaw's diadem yet, and he can't add any unknown risks. When he finds it, he can take them treasure hunting, and then they'll have to thank William. The three of them sneaked through the castle, occasionally sneaking into an abandoned classroom or some corners they had never been to. Although they seemed to be wandering around aimlessly, they were actually playing a puzzle game to explore the Hogwarts castle. But if you walk too much at night, you'll eventually encounter ghosts. William and the others encountered a ghost, Peeves. When it happened, Ron was carefully opening a door, for fear of making the slightest sound. As a result, there was indeed no sound when the door was opened, so much so that Peeves, who was drawing on the blackboard inside, didn't notice them. But the bad thing was Harry's broken mouth. When he saw Peeves, he actually exclaimed, "It's Peeves." When William heard this, he knew it was bad. He pulled Ron and quickly closed the classroom door. Although he didn't know if he could stop Peeves for a second, there was no harm in trying. Maybe it would work. Run! William shouted, and ran forward. Ron and Harry followed William's steps. Peeves didn't see who they were, but he knew they must be the little wizards. He raised his mouth and screamed happily. Let me see which little brat is still awake and wandering around in the middle of the night. Tisk tisk tisk, you are so naughty, I will catch you. Although Peeves was very fast, by the time he opened the door and came out, William and the other two had already disappeared. That's right, Peeves opened the door and came out. He is special, he has a physical body, unlike other ghosts in Hogwarts who can pass through walls. When Peeves found that the little wizard had escaped, his eyes were shining with interest. Hide and seek, it was so fun. Without thinking, Peeves flew to the nearest corner and began to chase William and the others. While chasing, he shouted, "Little brat, run faster, I'm catching up with you, if I catch you, I'm going to have a good time." Harry and Ron panicked when they heard the sound of Peeves getting closer and closer from behind. William, what should I do? It's okay, as long as Filch doesn't catch us. So why are we running? Of course it was Peeves' voice that would attract Filch. Before he finished speaking, the three heard Filch's voice coming from the corridor ahead. It was like there was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. It's over. We're done for. We're about to die. Ron said in despair. It's okay, let's run back and take the stairs. William quickly turned and ran towards the stairs. Come on, Ron. Harry grabbed Ron and ran after William. As soon as the three of them ran up the stairs, Peeves chased them, but Filch was still quite far away from them. It turned out to be a first-grade brat. I finally caught him, Peeves said proudly. Ignore him, let's keep running, as long as we avoid Filch. William and the other two ran straight past Peeves without paying any attention to him. Peeves was furious at the three people's disregard. He shouted at the top of his voice, "Students don't want to sleep. Students don't want to sleep." On the 6th floor stairs. Then he followed the three people while shouting. Shut up. Peeves. Ron shouted fiercely. But how could Peeves listen to him? Instead, he shouted even louder. William, what should we do now? Harry was also a little panicked. William pondered for a moment and thought of a way. Don't panic, watch me. William took out his wand and pointed it at Peeves. The tongue is locked. Peeves' voice suddenly stopped, and he grabbed his throat and choked. At this time, his tongue was stuck to the upper palate, so he couldn't speak. Refer to the original book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 19, Pixie Tale. Perhaps thinking that William had the ability to target him, Peeves looked at him fiercely, turned around and disappeared. Seeing Peeves disappear, Harry and Ron breathed a sigh of relief. Cool. What kind of spell is this? Ron asked in amazement. Will we learn it in the future? That will make it easier to deal with Peeves. Harry also asked. This spell is called the tongue-locking curse. I saw it in a book in the library. It should not be in the textbook. William actually lied. He learned it from Basic Spells. This spell was invented by Professor Severus Snape and recorded in his Advanced Potion Making textbook. It is also the textbook of the Half-Blood Prince in the original book. Hearing William's answer, Ron and Harry were obviously disappointed. At this moment, Filch's footsteps rang again, accompanied by his sticky voice. My dear, smell around, that's where Peeves' voice came from. Filch is coming, keep running. William whispered a warning, and took the lead to run down the stairs to the next floor. Harry and Ron followed closely behind, not slowing down at all. Filch may have heard their footsteps, and called Mrs. Norris to chase after them. Unfortunately, when William and his friends reached the next floor, the stairs were moved away. Helplessly, they could only run towards the corridor. But something even more unfortunate happened. They ran to the end of the corridor, but there was a door blocking them, and the door was locked. We are really doomed now. If we are caught, Hogwarts will not expel us. Ron had a sad face, and Harry also had a look of despair. He felt dizzy when he thought of Uncle Vernon looking at him with a mocking expression. They heard Mrs. Norris's meow, getting closer and closer to them. William looked at the lock on the door, and combined with the location on the 4th floor, he already knew what was inside. Fluffy, the three-headed dog raised by Hagrid. But he had confidence in himself, picked up his wand and knocked on the door lock, and whispered, "Open the door." The lock clicked, and the door suddenly opened. The three of them immediately got in and quickly closed the door. Harry and Ron put their ears to the door, listening nervously to the movement outside. William stared at the huge monster in front of him, which filled all the space from the ceiling to the floor. William estimated that it was about 4 meters tall, with 3 ferocious dog heads and 3 big mouths drooling, which made people shudder. It stood there motionless, staring at them with 6 eyes. It might be because William and his friends suddenly broke in, which surprised it a little, but it was quickly coming to its senses. The deafening roars forced Harry and Ron to pay attention to it. And Harry's hand was on the door handle, which showed that between Filch and Fluffy, they chose Filch. William didn't know what Dumbledore was thinking, arranging a thing like Fluffy here. The key is that the door lock doesn't apply an anti-unlocking spell, so anyone can come in. If a student is bitten to death by Fluffy, Dumbledore will be blamed. No wonder so many people say he is old and confused. From William's point of view, Hogwarts really doesn't pay enough attention to the safety of students. Of course, some of the little wizards in Hogwarts are not easy to deal with, and they like to die. Combining the two, William finds it strange that there are not many students who die every year. Although William thinks so, he is actually the kind of student who wants to die. For example, now, Harry and Ron are thinking about escaping, but William wants to try whether he can subdue this big guy with his bare hands. His current physical fitness is 6 or 7 times that of ordinary people, which can be said to be superhuman. It is not surprising that he has such an idea. So when Harry and Ron retreated from the door, William did not retreat but rushed forward and rushed towards the 3-headed dog Fluffy. Seeing that William, a little guy, actually rushed towards him, Lu Wei was immediately furious. He roared with 3 big mouths and bit William. William frowned in disgust. This guy was drooling with sticky saliva, and his teeth were yellow and his mouth was full of stench. It was simply too disgusting. William took a right step and dodged Lu Wei's 3 dog heads. Then, with lightning speed, he kicked the dog head on the right side. The kick was not light, and it directly caused its 3 dog heads to collide. For a while, his head was buzzing. However, it was really resistant to beating. Except for the dog head that was kicked directly by William, the other 2 dog heads just shook and recovered. Then a more ferocious roar began to echo in the house. The 3-headed dog Lu Wei attacked William again, but this time it learned its lesson. It did not bite with its mouth, but scratched with its thick and sharp claws. Compared with the dog heads, its claws were much faster, and William could feel the strong wind coming towards him. But he was not afraid at all, and even had the mood to joke. "You are such a jerk, how dare you show off your skills in front of an expert? Watch me use my whirlwind sweep kick." William dodged the 3-headed dog's claws, then used a powerful whip kick to sweep directly at its other front leg that supported its body. Ouch! 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 The 3 heads of the 3-headed dog wailed in pain, and quickly raised one leg and used the other leg to support the ground. William laughed and sleekly flashed in front of the 3-headed dog's supporting leg, and repeated the same trick. With this whip kick from William, the 3-headed dog was knocked down directly. After all, both of its front legs were attacked, and it was in so much pain that it had no strength to support itself. So the 3-headed dog Lu Wei immediately leaned forward and pressed towards William. Even in this situation, it did not forget to open its mouth and bite William. William would not show mercy, and kicked it in the chin with a high kick. This kick made the 3-headed dog, which was originally leaning forward, lean back. Just when William was about to beat the drowning dog and pursue the victory, the anxious voices of Harry and Ron came from the door. "William! William! Are you still alive?" The next moment, the door was opened by Harry. Harry and Ron looked pale and sweaty, and they looked in with fear. What they saw was not a horrific scene of blood and flesh, broken limbs, which made them feel relieved. But the scene in front of them also made them a little confused. William was standing in front of the huge 3-headed dog, looking calm and composed. But the 3-headed dog, which was ferocious and violent just now, was lying on the ground whimpering, looking at William with a fierce look, but also with a hint of fear. This made Harry and Ron very confused, wondering if they were wrong. But they didn't think much about it. They went forward to grab William and ran outside, without even having time to say a word. They ran all the way to the portrait of the fat lady on the 8th floor, and then stopped. "Where have you all been?" The fat lady looked at their embarrassed appearance and couldn't help asking. "Don't ask, dragon scum, Harry panted. The portrait turned forward and William and the other 2 hurried in. As soon as they entered the lounge, Harry and Ron collapsed in the armchairs, trembling all over. William sat on the sofa opposite them, clenching his fists with some regret. For a long time, the 3 of them did not speak. "William, why didn't you run just now? Do you know that we were almost scared to death when we found out that you didn't catch up?" Harry complained angrily. They were frightened by the 3-headed dog just now, so they turned around and ran. As a result, when they ran to the 6th floor, they found that William was no longer behind them. This scared them. Could it be that William was stopped by the 3-headed dog? Although Harry and Ron were scared to death, they still ran back without hesitation to rescue William. I don't know if they are stupid or stubborn. Shouldn't they go to the professor in this situation? Anyway, the final result is that they returned to the 4th floor, ran in and rescued William. Although William was not in danger, he still affirmed the behavior of Harry and Ron, and felt that they were still loyal. But he couldn't say what they said, but had to follow the thinking of Duke William. William said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, but I have to cover you. After all, I took you 2 out for a night tour, so I have to ensure your safety. Besides, I still have some strength, and I can barely guarantee my own safety." William's words made Harry and Ron speechless, and they felt that they were really beasts. William was willing to confront that monster alone for their safety, but they actually complained that William ran too slowly. Thinking of this, Harry and Ron felt that they really deserved to die. "Sorry, William, we misunderstood you." Harry and Ron apologized with guilt. But Ron knew how to divert his guilt. He angrily scolded, "What on earth did they want to do? They actually locked up such a thing in the school. This is simply murder." Harry nodded fiercely. Yes, if this were a Muggle school, they would definitely be closed down due to complaints from parents. Hagrid once told me that Hogwarts is the safest place in the world. Harry suddenly stopped talking here, frowned and thought. What's wrong, Harry? Ron asked. Harry hesitated and said, Did Hagrid mention the three-headed dog today? William nodded. Yes, Hagrid said he had a three-headed dog, but he lent it to Professor Dumbledore. He used the three-headed dog to guard something. As for what it was, Hagrid didn't say. I think this three-headed dog is the one Hagrid raised, and I found a trap door under his feet, which obviously guards something. This matches up with what Hagrid said. I didn't expect it was Dumbledore who put it there. Harry and Ron couldn't help but frown after hearing William's analysis. After relaxing in the common room for a while, William and the other two returned to the dormitory. Although the night out had many twists and turns, the three fell asleep soon after lying on the bed. The night gradually faded, and a hint of light appeared on the horizon. William woke up on time at 7 o'clock as usual, but today was the weekend, so he did not wake up his roommates and let them continue to sleep. After getting up, getting dressed and washing up, William did not seem to have stayed up late at all. He was energetic and radiant. When William came to the Gryffindor common room, Hermione was already there. Good morning, William. Good morning, Hermione, let's have breakfast together, and then we will start training. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. William and Hermione walked out of the common room and headed towards the hall while chatting. Hermione, there is one thing I am curious about. Why was a student as smart and intelligent as you, who is very active in studying, not sorted into Ravenclaw but Gryffindor? William did know why Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor, but he still wanted to know what Hermione was thinking when she was sorted. Hermione did not answer William's question, but asked William in return. Then why were you sorted into Gryffindor? You are more knowledgeable, wiser, smarter, and more talented than me. William was slightly startled. Hermione actually admitted that she was not as good as him. Didn't she always want to surpass William? Although surprised, William did not think much about it and answered, The Sorting Hat did consider sending me to Ravenclaw, but finally gave up the idea. Why did you give up this idea? Hermione asked curiously. William was of course too embarrassed to tell the real reason, so he shrugged and said helplessly, I don't know about that, it didn't tell me either. What about you? William quickly changed the subject and asked Hermione. Hermione smiled slightly. Me too, the Sorting Hat once considered sending me to Ravenclaw. But I think Gryffindor is the best, so the Sorting Hat put me in Gryffindor house. Now it seems that it is true, Gryffindor is the best college. Not only did it have Professor Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall, but now it has such a great student like you. William laughed when he heard this. It seems that in Hermione's heart, he is still quite good. Am I that good? I can actually be compared with Professor Dumbledore. Hermione pursed her lips and said, Of course you can't be compared with Dumbledore now, but I believe that William, your future achievements will not be worse than his. Well, William was stunned. He didn't expect Hermione to be so confident in herself. Although he also felt that his future achievements would not be lower than Dumbledore's, that was based on the system. And why did Hermione do that? He really didn't understand. After all, you can't guess a girl's mind. You can't guess it no matter how hard you try. Well, I'll take your good words then, and I think Hermione, you will achieve great things in the future, at least you will be the Minister of Magic. William didn't say anything flattering, it was a fact that Hermione really would be the Minister of Magic in the future. Hermione giggled. I will work hard, but in order not to disappoint you, William, you have to teach me more. Hearing this, William figured it out. Okay, he was tricked by Hermione. He is so terrifying at such a young age, it will be terrible if he becomes the Minister of Magic in the future. If this kid is not eliminated, he will become a big trouble in the future. William's mind was too active, and he was distracted all of a sudden. Concentrating his mind, William nodded and agreed. Don't worry, I promise to teach you everything I know, so that you can learn to the point of ecstasy and can't stop. Hermione frowned slightly. Why did this sound strange? But she had achieved her goal, so she didn't care about these details. As they were talking, the two arrived at the hall. There were far fewer people in the hall on Saturday morning than usual. William and the other man sat in their usual seats, casually picked up some bacon and toast and started to eat. To be honest, William was not satisfied with the breakfast at Hogwarts, but in order to fill his stomach, he accepted everything. Hermione ate with relish and looked quite satisfied. After breakfast, the two left the castle and came all the way to the lake. Hermione took out her wand and stared at William eagerly. William, how should we train? William also took out the magic wand, and then said, let's practice wrist movements first to ensure the control of the magic wand. This is the basis. Then you can practice casting spells, and then practice spell accuracy, first hitting fixed targets, then moving targets. Take it step by step, and proceed gradually. Hermione was very satisfied when she heard William's training plan. She liked this kind of training that had a logical basis. Hermione obviously had a scientific mindset, focusing on logic and systematization. Just like in the original book, what she could not accept the most was divination, thinking that this course was illogical and not rigorous. But Hermione was very interested in the arithmetic divination class, because the core of arithmetic divination was mathematics, which was rigorous and logical. William began to train Hermione, and would teach her hand in hand from time to time. The relationship between the two quickly heated up. On the other hand, Harry started to think hard after getting up. What exactly is the three-headed dog guarding? What did Hagrid say? If you want to hide something, Gringotts is the safest place in the world probably except Hogwarts. Then he said yesterday that the three-headed dog was borrowed by Dumbledore to guard something. Combined with what Hagrid said when he took something from the Gringotts vault before, he said that Dumbledore arranged for him to take something. So, the truth is only the dirty little bag that Hagrid took out from the underground vault number 713 was hidden behind the trapdoor guarded by the big dog. But what kind of thing needs to be guarded so strictly and is also coveted by dark wizards? He told Ron his thoughts. Ron thought for a while and said, it is either very valuable or very dangerous. Harry nodded. Or both. However, the only thing they can be sure of about the mysterious object is that it is 2 inches long. Without more clues, it is impossible to guess what it is. Maybe I can ask Hagrid. Harry thought. On Saturday afternoon, William came to the room of requirement again. It was still the same room where he hid things last time, with things piled up like mountains and in disarray. But this time, William came prepared. After exploring here without any results last time, William felt that he could not search blindly and had to use the power of magic. But he didn't have any magic props now, so he could only hope for spells. Then William began to read the Basic Spells Collection, close double angle bracket. Open double angle bracket. William has not finished reading the book, Basic Spells Collection, even though he has had it for more than a month. There is really too much content in it, and it deserves the name of a collection. After William consciously searched, he really found a spell that might be useful. Honesty spell. That's right, the honesty spell, a spell that sounds like a lie detector or a spell that makes people tell the truth. But in fact, it is not. The honesty spell is a spell used to detect hidden spells and hidden magical objects. The honesty detector is a magic prop made according to the principle of this spell. After casting the honesty spell, when your wand is close to the hidden spell or magical object, a red light will flash at the top of the wand. Doesn't it sound like the detector in the hands of the security inspector at the railway station, except that one is luminous and the other is audible? Although this spell cannot allow William to find the Ravenclaw crown directly, it is at least a little helpful. He can use the honesty spell to quickly screen, which can also save a lot of time and improve efficiency. I hope I'll have good luck today and find the Ravenclaw diadem in one fell swoop. William prayed silently, then raised his wand and cast an honesty spell. The wand flashed and returned to normal. William walked forward, probing here and pointing there with the wand in his hand. From time to time, the tip of the wand would flash red twice. At this time, William would stop and take a closer look, and sometimes he would pick it up and put it in his pocket. William's pocket was cast with a traceless extension spell, just for shopping. He would not do this normally. After all, it would not be good if someone found out. After walking and stopping, picking and choosing, William finally stopped in front of a large cabinet. Based on his memories of his previous life, plus the knowledge he learned from books in this life, William deduced that this cabinet was the Vanishing Cabinet. Before this, William had actually forgotten that there was such a thing in Hogwarts. He was bent on finding Ravenclaw's crown, but he had no clue at all. But he didn't expect the vanishing cabinet, but he happened to encounter it. It can only be said that one can't plant trees intentionally, but willows grow shade unintentionally. But this is a good thing for William, an unexpected surprise. He remembered that this vanishing cabinet there are two, one in Hogwarts Castle and the other in Borgin and Burke's in Knockturn Alley. It seems that I have to wait for an opportunity to get the other vanishing cabinet. When the passage between them is opened, William may be able to go home at any time. And it also eliminates a potential hidden danger for Hogwarts, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. You must know that in the original book, this vanishing cabinet was used by Malfoy to send the Death Eaters directly to Hogwarts Castle to help him assassinate Dumbledore. Although it was not Malfoy who did it in the end, the result was that Dumbledore died. This is simply a disaster for Hogwarts. And everything is because of Malfoy, because of this vanishing cabinet. Now that William has taken this vanishing cabinet away, doesn't it mean that he saved Dumbledore's life and became his savior? I believe that if Dumbledore knew, he would definitely thank William for saving his life. But William is a person who does good things without leaving a name, so he won't tell them about this. After finding a good reason for his behavior, William began to prepare to move the vanishing cabinet with peace of mind. The vanishing cabinet is so big, how can I move it? William was a little embarrassed. I wonder how Newt managed to stuff those large animals into the suitcase. Let's try the shrinking spell and see if it works. William didn't know if the shrinking spell would work on magic items, but he waved his wand to give it a try. Shrink quickly. Fortunately, the spell worked, and the disappearing cabinet in front of him became small in an instant. William showed a satisfied smile. Fortunately, the spell works, otherwise there is really no way to move it. Then he bent over to pick up the shrunken disappearing cabinet and put it in his pocket. System, collect the vanishing cabinet. William spoke impatiently. He had a feeling that the star rating of the vanishing cabinet collected this time would definitely not be low, and the system's reward would definitely be very good. Ding! Collect the extraordinary 7-star item vanishing cabinet, and reward the host with +7 magic power, +6400 galleons of money, and master-level understanding of space magic. As the system sounded, a large wave of knowledge about space magic reached William's brain. And it quickly took root and became William's own knowledge, without any hindrance. These knowledge and understandings of space magic are not about a single spell, but involve all space magic. For example, the apparition spell, the traceless extension spell, the portkey spell and other spells. In addition, there are some thoughts about the nature of space magic. It can be said that when William fully absorbs and digests this knowledge, he may be able to create simple space spells by himself. Even though he has just obtained this knowledge and understanding, William's traceless extension spell has made great progress and is already considered a master. Not only that, William has never learned apparition, but if he meets the age requirement, he can now take the exam in the Ministry of Magic and get a permit. After receiving this reward, William can no longer be said to be overjoyed, he is simply ecstatic. Not bad, really good, it seems to be a high-star collection, the reward is extraordinary. With my current traceless stretch spell, I should be able to expand the space inside the suitcase a little bit. Let's go back and give it a try. We have gained so much today. I'm afraid our luck has run out. Let's not waste time. While William was thinking, he was ready to leave the room of requirement. But sometimes luck comes and it's unstoppable. As soon as he turned a corner, he saw a broken bust of an ugly old wizard standing on a crate. Surprise, an unexpected encounter. William unconsciously put on a bright smile on his face. Is today his lucky day? He took a few quick steps and came to the broken bust. He observed the surrounding scene and tried to find the Ravenclaw crown. Without using a wand to detect, William saw a crown that looked like the Ravenclaw crown. The crown looked a little rusty and was casually placed on a crate. On top of the big cabinet. William used his wand to detect it, and there was no hidden spell around. As Voldemort's Horcrux, he did not set up any protective magic around it, not even a trap, which was incredible. Maybe Voldemort felt that this place was very safe and hidden, and no one would think that he hid the Horcrux here. But unfortunately, William was a scripted person, and it was Voldemort's bad luck to run into him. William stepped forward and picked up the crown, only to see that it was inlaid with a blue gem, and the overall shape was an eagle with spread wings. On the bottom edge of the crown was engraved the famous motto of Ravenclaw, "Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest wealth of mankind." That's right, this is the Ravenclaw's diadem, the system will collect it for me. Ding! Ding! Collect the extraordinary 9-star item Ravenclaw's crown, and reward the host with magic power +9, money plus 25,600 galleons, and all the magic knowledge of Rowena Ravenclaw. In an instant, a large amount of information poured into William's mind, making him feel slightly dizzy. You should know that William's spiritual attribute reached 85, far exceeding ordinary people. Even so, he felt slightly dizzy, which shows the huge amount of information. Rowena Ravenclaw, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and the founder of Ravenclaw College. Obviously, Ravenclaw College is named after her surname. She lived in the early Middle Ages, had supreme wisdom and creativity, and was considered one of the greatest wizards of the time. Rowena Ravenclaw believed that, the students we teach must have superior intelligence. Therefore, Ravenclaw College only admits smart and intelligent students. Rumor has it that the location and name of Hogwarts were proposed by Rowena Ravenclaw and approved by others. Moreover, the ever-changing staircases in Hogwarts were also suggested by her and designed by her personally. Such a legendary witch, how vast and brilliant her magical knowledge must be. After receiving all the information, William's smile gradually widened, and finally he even laughed wildly. It can be seen how happy he was that he could make the usually steady William laugh like this. Today might really be William's lucky day. Just as he was laughing wildly, the system's voice sounded again. Ding! Collect the extraordinary 8-star item Voldemort's Horcrux, reward the host with magic power +8, money plus 12,800 galleons, and master-level soul magic understanding. Then it was the familiar process again, a lot of information poured into William's mind. The 3 consecutive influxes of information made William feel drunk and dizzy. However, this feeling did not last long, and William sobered up. Oh my God! What's going on? Is there a bug in the system? William was a little confused. A Ravenclaw diadem was collected by the system twice. But the star ratings were different twice, which was really strange. Although William was confused, the system did not explain the reason to him. But William calmed down and roughly guessed the reason. The clues can be seen from the different names the system gave to the diadem twice. Ravenclaw's diadem and Voldemort's Horcrux are one and the same, but they have different evaluations. Anyway, no matter what, William felt that he benefited from it, so there was no problem. As for the Grandmaster level understanding of soul magic that was rewarded later, it was probably Voldemort's level of understanding of soul magic. In this regard, it is estimated that Dumbledore is not as good as Voldemort. After all, although Dumbledore is very talented, he has shackled himself in the study of the soul, unlike Voldemort. It is as easy for Voldemort to kill a person as to drink a sip of water. In comparison, Voldemort's attainments in this area must be far superior to Dumbledore's. Not to mention, Voldemort is also a genius. Of course, he is more like a madman and a psychopath now. How can a person who divides his soul into 7 or 8 parts still be a normal person? William put away the Ravenclaw diadem. This time he really wanted to leave. When he returned to the Gryffindor common room, he saw Harry and the others gathered around the notice board, sighing. This made him curious. After all, watching the excitement is also a habit that goes deep into the soul. William leaned over to take a look at the notice board. It turned out that it was a notice to the first-year students that they would start flying lessons next Thursday, together with the Slytherin students. Harry said with a depressed look, "What bad luck. It's really not what I expected. I made a fool of myself in front of Malfoy on a flying broom." "You might make a fool of yourself, but you don't know," Ron said rationally. "I know Malfoy always brags that he is great at Quidditch, but I bet he is just bragging." William also patted Harry on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Ron is right, Harry, you are just worrying too much." Hearing William's voice, Harry turned back in surprise. "William, why are you here? This is the Gryffindor common room. I'm a member of Gryffindor. What's so strange about me being here?" William pretended to be choking. He was in a really good mood today and even joked with Harry. Harry heard William say this and hurriedly explained, "That's not what I meant. It's just that I haven't seen you, William, all day today. I was a little surprised to see you suddenly appear." "Oh, so that's it, I thought it was something else." William pretended to be enlightened. Ron looked helpless beside him. He had seen the teasing smile on William's face and knew he was joking. "William, you seem to be in a good mood. Tell us what's going on so that we can be happy too." Hearing Ron's question, William pursed his lips and said, "How do you know I'm in a good mood? Is it so obvious?" Ron nodded affirmatively, "Of course I am. You don't usually joke like this." Harry shouted when he heard it, "Are you kidding? William was joking just now. I thought it was real. You scared me." William patted Harry on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Isn't this just to divert your attention so that you don't have to worry about making a fool of yourself in front of Malfoy?" "Is that so? Thank you." Harry didn't know whether he meant it sincerely or not. Anyway, William took it as his sincerity and patted Harry on the shoulder and said, "You're welcome. Actually, Harry, you don't have to worry. Malfoy is 90% bragging. You must know that the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy states that wizards cannot be in front of muggles using magic. Do you think that riding a broomstick to avoid a helicopter is a violation of the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy?" After hearing William's well-reasoned explanation, Harry was relieved and the frustration on his face disappeared. "William, you still know more." Harry didn't know how many times he had said this. They had only known each other for a week. William shrugged. "If you just go to the library and read more books, you will understand a lot of things. I won't chat with you anymore. I'm going back to the dormitory." "Are you going back?" Harry and Ron looked at each other and nodded at the same time. "Let's go back to the dormitory too." "Let's go then." William took a step and headed for the spiral staircase. The three returned to the dormitory and found Neville and Seamus were there. William told them about the flying class. Neville suddenly became nervous because he had never ridden a broomstick since he was a child. His grandmother never let him get close to a broomstick. Maybe his grandmother was right. After all, even if Neville had his feet on the ground, he could create endless accidents. Seamus was very excited and said that he had spent most of his childhood flying around in the wilderness on a broomstick. This may be a lot of water, but William and the other two did not expose it. Ron wanted to brag, but with William present, he was embarrassed to brag. After all, William did know a lot. "What magic did you just cast?" Hermione leaned over to William and asked quietly. The shock-absorbing spell was originally used in the production of flying brooms to ensure that the rider feels more comfortable. William explained casually. He didn't expect that Madame Hooch didn't know this spell. She is also a professor of flying classes. She should be in contact with this kind of spell for designing flying brooms frequently. It seems that the professors at Hogwarts are really mixed. There are big names in various fields such as the Four Deans, and there are also unqualified people like Quirrell and Madame Hooch. William and Hermione had just whispered a few words when they heard Malfoy's rampant laughter not far away. "Did you see his face, that big fool?" The other Slytherin students echoed. "Shut up, Malfoy." Parvati Patil snapped. "Huh, protecting Longbottom," sneered Pansy Parkinson, an ugly Slytherin girl. "I didn't expect you to like chubby little tears, Patil." "Look," Malfoy said, rushing over and grabbing something on the grass, "that big fool Longbottom's grandmother gave it to him." He held up the memory ball, and it sparkled in the sun. Although William felt that Malfoy was too annoying, he did not try to stop him, because this was Harry's chance to become a Seeker, and he didn't want to ruin it. Sure enough, Harry couldn't help it, and whispered to Malfoy, "Give it to me, Malfoy." Everyone stopped talking and stared at the two, waiting for their showdown. Malfoy grinned uglily. "I'd like to leave it somewhere for Longbottom to pick up. In a tree, how about that?" "Get it!" Harry shouted. But Malfoy had already jumped on his broom and took off. Although his previous words were bragging, he really flew well. He was suspended at a height parallel to the top of an oak tree and shouted, "Come and get it, Potter." Harry grabbed his broom. Hermione wanted to step forward to stop him, but William was quick and grabbed her. "William, let me go. He will cause trouble for all of us if he does this." Hermione glared at William angrily. William did not let her go, but asked her, Hermione, do you think Harry will listen to you? Can you stop him? Before Hermione could answer, Harry had already got on the flying broom, pushed the ground hard, and flew up. Seeing this, Hermione felt that it was over and Harry would definitely be expelled. She struggled to break free from William, stared at him and said, You are harming Harry by doing this, he will be expelled. Don't worry, Harry won't be expelled. William said calmly. Hermione was very dissatisfied with William's attitude, and asked indignantly, Why are you so sure? Madame Hooch said that anyone who flies privately will be expelled from Hogwarts. William shook his head and sighed, Hermione, you are still too naive. Madame Hooch does not have the ability to expel students from Hogwarts. If you don't believe it, we can make a bet. If Harry is expelled, I will let you deal with him, how about that? Hermione calmed down a little, but still said dissatisfiedly, If Harry is expelled, what's the point of me dealing with you? Do you want to be expelled too? William shrugged. Even if Harry is expelled, it is his own fault. Do you think you can stop him if I don't hold you back? While Hermione and William were arguing, Harry had already skillfully controlled the flying broom and flew towards Malfoy. Perhaps he inherited James Potter's Quidditch talent. Harry seemed to know how to control the flying broom. Malfoy barely dodged Harry, and Harry turned around suddenly and grabbed the broom steadily. Several people below began to applaud. There's no Crabbe or Goyle here to protect you, Malfoy. Harry shouted. Malfoy seemed to have the same idea. Here, see if you can catch it. He shouted, throwing the glass ball high into the air and then rapidly dropping to the ground. Harry saw it rise to the sky as if in slow motion and then begin to fall. He leaned forward, pointing his broom downward, and in the blink of an eye he was swooping down in pursuit of the ball. The wind whistled in his ears, mingling with the screams of the audience below, and he reached out and caught the glass ball a foot above the ground. He straightened the broom handle in time and fell gently to the grass, the memory ball firmly grasped in his palm. Harry Potter. Harry's heart suddenly sank, faster than it had just dived. Professor McGonagall was running towards them. Harry stood up from the ground, trembling all over. In all my years at Hogwarts, I've never. Professor McGonagall was so surprised that she couldn't speak. Her eyes were shining with anger. How dare you, you'll break your neck. Professor, although Harry was a little reckless, it was Malfoy who started this. William explained to Professor McGonagall. Although he knew that Harry would be fine, he still had to say what he had to say. Professor McGonagall nodded seriously. I understand, Mr. Cavendish. Okay, Potter, follow me. Seeing this, Ron also hurriedly said, but Malfoy. Professor McGonagall was not so easy to talk to Ron. Shut up, Mr. Weasley. Potter, come with me. Professor McGonagall strode towards the castle, and Harry followed mechanically. He knew he was going to be expelled, and he wanted to say a few words to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his throat. When Professor McGonagall and Harry walked away, Hermione immediately said angrily to William, This is what you said you wouldn't expel. Madame Hooch doesn't have the ability to expel students, but Professor McGonagall is the vice president, she must have the ability. Are you happy now? You and Harry are still roommates. You didn't stop him when he made a mistake, and you stopped me from stopping him. You are such a fool. Hermione said, and without waiting for William to explain, she turned and walked to the other side, obviously not wanting to pay attention to him. William smacked his lips, feeling a little wronged. Even if he didn't stop Hermione, Hermione couldn't stop Harry. Forget it, Hermione didn't take the script. Unlike him, she was a time traveler and knew most things well. But it didn't feel good to be misunderstood, and William was in a bad mood. When he saw Malfoy and the others laughing so happily, he became even more unhappy. William felt that if he was unhappy, then others would not be happy either. So he took a step and walked towards Malfoy and the others. Malfoy, you are having fun flying, right? I will let you fly more happily, okay? William didn't wait for Malfoy to answer, he grabbed his collar and threw him into the sky. Before Malfoy could react, he had already flown into the sky. However, this time the flight was out of his control, and he quickly fell to the ground. Malfoy was so scared that he waved his hands and feet and screamed in fear. William reached out to catch the falling Malfoy and prevented him from falling to the ground. It was enough to scare him, but there was no need to break his hands and feet. Malfoy's followers Crabbe and Goyle didn't dare to step forward at this time, because William was too scary. Just throwing people around for fun, how amazing. Hermione, who ignored William, ran over and grabbed him. William, what are you doing? Do you want to be expelled from Hogwarts like Harry? William casually left the limp Malfoy behind, and a smile returned to his face. Hermione, I didn't hurt him, why would I be expelled? Besides, Harry wasn't expelled either, so you'd better stop cursing him. Hermione became even angrier when she heard that. Yes, Harry wasn't expelled, I cursed him, and you didn't hurt Malfoy, I'm just meddling in other people's business, okay. William held her back and said sincerely, no, how could that be? I know you're worried about me and care about me, so you stopped me. Seeing William so sincere, Hermione was not so angry anymore. But at this time, Malfoy, who had recovered, yelled at William in a cowardly manner, Cavendish, just wait, I'm going to tell my dad that you bullied me. Malfoy didn't dare to say the following words, because William's cold eyes swept over him. Do you want to fly again? A good flying lesson ended abruptly. Malfoy was threatened by William, and he couldn't beat William, so he swallowed his anger and stayed away. But he didn't hide his resentful eyes at all, and he must be thinking about how to retaliate in the future. But William didn't care at all. After all, strength is respected in the wizarding world. Hermione was a little angry. She didn't say a word to William at dinner and ate the stew by herself. Harry, on the other hand, talked nonstop and told William and Ron about the thrilling experience in the afternoon. Harry said that he was ready to be expelled, but Professor McGonagall took him to find Wood, the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. And let him be Gryffindor's seeker, and he specially asked Dumbledore for this. You are kidding me, Ron said in disbelief. He was about to put a piece of steak and kidney pie into his mouth, but forgot about it halfway. William had expected this, so he acted very calmly, but he still smiled and congratulated Harry. Congratulations, Harry, you are the youngest player on the house team in Hogwarts in this century. Thank you, William, you are really knowledgeable, Wood did tell me so. Harry said, grabbing the pie and stuffing it into his mouth. After all the ups and downs in the afternoon, he felt very hungry. Ron was too surprised and shocked. He sat there, staring at Harry blankly. William turned his head to look at Hermione, who was silent beside him, and said smugly, Hermione, Harry was not expelled, so you lost the bet between us. Hearing this, Hermione glared at William speechlessly and snorted coldly, he was lucky this time, but I admit defeat. Just admit defeat. William's face suddenly changed, and he said with annoyance, oh. I made a mistake. I only said that if I lose, you can do whatever you want, but I didn't say what will happen if you lose. Is it too late now? Hearing this, Hermione immediately shouted, of course it's too late. This is your own mistake. Hermione, this is not fair. William argued. Anyway, I don't care. Who told you not to say it then? It's too late now. Hermione showed a proud smile. William said with regret and helplessness, okay, it's really my problem. Seeing William's expression, Hermione was immediately happy, and all the unpleasantness in the afternoon was forgotten. This matter ends here, but William, please don't break the rules again. Okay, I'll listen to you. In fact, these were all William's deliberate pretense, and now it seems that the effect is quite good. At this moment, a very unwelcome person showed up. Malfoy came over with Crabbe and Goyle. Maybe he thought that the main guest seats were full of teachers, and William didn't dare to hit him, so Malfoy came over arrogantly. However, the fact that William casually threw him around for fun still left a deep shadow on Malfoy. But when he thought of his own plan, he calmed down a lot. Cavendish, you barbarian, you attacked me today when I was not prepared. I want to duel with you. Malfoy looked very angry. Are you sure you want to fight me? William sneered. Of course I'm sure, but we are wizards, not barbarians, so I want to have a wizard duel with you, only using wands, no contact. Malfoy also knew to restrict William, for fear that William would play tricks on him again. Without waiting for William to answer, he said triumphantly, what do you think? I guess you haven't heard of a wizard duel. William sneered. Malfoy, you underestimate me too much. Wizard duel, right. What time? If that's okay with you, how about tonight at midnight? We'll meet in the trophy room, which is never locked. Okay, but I hope you won't run away from the battlefield. Otherwise, tomorrow the whole Hogwarts will spread the story of the coward Malfoy. William knew that this guy had bad intentions, but he also took advantage of the situation and turned the tables. Sure enough, when Malfoy heard William's words, his face changed instantly, and he turned pale. Humph. Malfoy, will definitely not run away from the battlefield. Just wait. I hope so. William sneered. Malfoy no longer paid attention to William, but looked at Harry and said sarcastically. Are you having your last meal, Potter? When are you catching the train back to the Muggles? Now that you are back on the ground and have your little friends by your side, you are much braver. Harry was not so easy to mess with, and he spoke in a sarcastic tone. Of course, Crabbe and Goyle were not little kids at all, but with the teacher around and William next to them, they didn't dare to act rashly. They could only frown and pinch their fingers to make a sound. I am always willing to fight you alone. If you want, you can come to the trophy display room tonight and challenge me to a wizard duel. I'll come. Harry agreed without hesitation. Malfoy nodded with satisfaction and left with Crabbe and Goyle. Hermione stared at William again. You just promised me that you won't break the rules in the future. William nodded and said, yes, I didn't break the rules either. You agreed to duel with Malfoy at midnight, and you still say you didn't break the rules. Hermione said angrily. William shook his head calmly. Hermione, you are wrong to say that. Only when you are caught on the spot will it be considered a violation of the school rules. As long as I'm not caught on the spot, I won't be breaking the rules. When Hermione heard what William said, she puffed up her face and said angrily, you are just making up excuses. That's just the fact. Before that, I had wandered around the school twice at night, and I was fine. Hearing William say this, Hermione couldn't hold it anymore and looked at William in astonishment. Is everything you said true? Are you lying to me? Of course it's true. I ran into the Weasley twins on a night out last Friday night. Hermione felt a little confused at this moment. Could it be that William was right? As long as she wasn't caught, it wouldn't be considered a violation. Her heart was a little confused. After all, she had always been a good student who followed the rules. She had never thought about such a violation. Hermione, Hogwarts is a school of magic. You can't look at it with common sense. Think about it yourself. William's words had a great impact on Hermione. The two did not talk to each other and finished their dinner quietly. On the other side, Ron volunteered to be Harry's assistant. Harry was not very clear about wizard duels and assistants, so he asked Ron. Ron explained lightly, if you die, the assistant will take over. When Harry heard this, his face suddenly became a little unnatural. He was only 11 years old and was still a little scared when he heard the word death. Ron caught the expression on his face and hurriedly added, but you know, people only die in formal duels with real wizards. The best you and Malfoy can do is shoot sparks at each other. You two know too little magic to really hurt each other. What if I wave my wand and nothing happens? Harry was a little unsure. Ron suggested, then throw away the wand and punch him in the nose. Because they had agreed to duel with Malfoy at midnight, William and the other two left the dormitory at 11:30. When they arrived at the Gryffindor common room, they ran into Hermione who had been waiting there for a long time. Hermione, it's so late, why are you here? William guessed that Hermione might come to stop him. But Hermione said, William, I want to go with you, and I'll be your assistant. William looked at her in surprise. You're going with me. Aren't you afraid of violating the school rules? Hermione said playfully, William, you said it yourself, as long as you don't get caught, it doesn't count as violating the school rules. Besides, I'll go with you guys. If you get caught, it won't matter if I'm there. If you guys hadn't been caught, then I wouldn't have been caught either, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. Hearing Hermione say this, it seems that William's words still had some impact on her. At least now she knows how to adapt and is no longer a nerd who memorizes books by heart. Okay, let's go. After walking out of the portrait hole, they heard a wheezing sound. What's that sound? Is that Mrs. Norris? Ron asked, holding his breath, squinting his eyes and looking into the dark. It's not Mrs. Norris, it's Neville. William saw him curled up on the floor, sleeping soundly. But when they approached, Neville suddenly woke up. Thank God, you found me. I've been out here for hours, I forgot the new password, and I can't go back to sleep. William patted his shoulder to calm him down. Keep your voice down, Neville, the password is, pig nose, go back to bed. Neville nodded and prepared to go back, but saw William and the others walking out, and asked hurriedly, where are you going? This is none of your business, Neville, go back to sleep. Ron said impatiently. William also urged, Neville, you were frightened today, you should go back to the dormitory and have a rest. Okay, then I'll go back. Neville finally nodded in agreement and turned back. William and the others walked briskly along the corridor, with moonlight pouring in from the tall windows, streaking across the ground. Hogwarts Castle was silent at midnight, and only their footsteps could be heard in the corridor. They were lucky enough not to encounter any obstacles along the way, and successfully arrived at the trophy display room on the 4th floor. The crystal glass cabinets displaying the prizes sparkled in the moonlight. In the darkness, trophies, shields, medals and statues flashed silver and gold. The four of them took out their wands to prevent Malfoy's sudden attack. Unfortunately, time passed by, and William and the others did not wait for Malfoy, but instead waited for Filch. It seems that Malfoy was timid after all, or was plotting. Maybe he thought that by informing Filch, he could catch William and the others in one fell swoop, and he would not have to worry about William's threats today. Filch brought Mrs. Norris with him, and the sound was getting closer and closer. What should I do? Hermione asked William silently, she looked very nervous. Don't worry, just look at me. William raised his wand and stared at the door intently. Filch's footsteps outside the door became clearer and stronger, and Hermione and the other two in the room looked paler and paler. Let's run from the back. Ron finally couldn't stand the pressure and said tremblingly. Harry and Hermione were a little moved, but they finally chose to believe William. William still stared at the door calmly. Finally, Filch stepped into the trophy display room. At that moment, he didn't see anything clearly and was hit by William's magic. Confuse the audience. William said in a barely perceptible voice. This confusion charm had no color or sound at all, and it was released very quickly. Not to mention Filch, the old squib, even the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic would be affected in this situation. Filch trembled after being hit, then he told Mrs. Norris to turn around and leave the trophy display room and walk towards his office. The confusion charm can make the victim act according to the deployment of the caster, and even make the victim obey the caster. Just now, William asked Filch to go back to the office directly and not wander around in the castle. Done. Hermione and the other two finally breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Filch leave. It was really exciting just now. They stood there waiting for Filch to slowly approach. The sound of his footsteps getting closer and closer was like a death knell. Fortunately, William was as reliable as ever. I was really scared just now. By the way, William, what kind of magic did you use to make Filch leave obediently? Hermione asked William while patting her chest and panting. Her curiosity was still so strong. Harry and Ron also looked at William eagerly, like curious babies. Confusion charm. I used the confusion charm, which is generally used to confuse and disorient the opponent or interfere with objects. William explained briefly to satisfy Hermione's curiosity. Then he said, let's go back. That coward Malfoy won't come to the appointment. He is worthy of being a student of Slytherin College, and he knows how to play tricks. Hearing what William said, Harry also said angrily, it must be Malfoy who leaked the news to Filch, this despicable guy. While complaining about Malfoy, the four of them headed towards Gryffindor Tower. When they met Peeves on the way, he was about to yell, but when he saw William raising his wand, he immediately stopped and slipped away obediently. It seems that William left a deep impression on him last time, otherwise he would not be so afraid of William. After returning to Gryffindor Tower safely, the four of them went back to rest. Tonight was really a bit anticlimactic and not fun at all. The next day, Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes. He saw William and the other two were still in Hogwarts. And the way William and the others looked at Malfoy, that kind of contempt and ridicule, made Malfoy break down. Coward, coward. Ron ran to Malfoy and cursed him with disdain. William found the Weasley twins and hired them to spread the news that Malfoy was a coward and didn't dare to duel. The cost of hiring them was only 3 galleons, which was very cheap. The Weasley twins had a wide network of contacts and many ways to get around. In less than a day, the news that Malfoy was a coward spread throughout Hogwarts. Boss William, if you have any business in the future, you can come to us brothers, we promise to help you handle it properly. After receiving the 3 galleons of employment fee, the Weasley twins changed their name from William to Boss William. After all, they need a lot of money to do experiments, but the Weasley family is indeed a bit poor, so they really like William, a generous boss. I have a business right now, do you guys take it? William thinks it's really worthwhile to get things done by spending money. Yes, of course I will. Fred answered firmly. I want to get a Niffler. If you can get one for me, I can give you 30 gold galleons. How about that? 30 gold galleons. No problem. The Weasley twins agreed without hesitation. After all, the Niffler is not a rare exotic animal. Okay, that's it. Here are 5 gold galleons as a deposit for you. I hope you won't let me down. William took out 5 gold galleons and handed them to Fred. The boss is generous. But I have to remind you that although the sniff is gentle, it can cause damage to your property. If you want to keep it at home, you should be careful. George kindly reminded William, not wanting such a generous boss to have a bad impression of them because of the sniff. William nodded. Thanks for the reminder, I will pay attention to it when the time comes. The sudden rumor made Malfoy feel strange looks from people around him wherever he went. Of course, there were also whispers that were just loud enough for him to hear. He is the coward Malfoy. It is said that he is a pure-blood wizard from the Holy 28 clans. I think he is nothing special. That Malfoy is from Slytherin house, it's normal for him to be a coward. All of this made Malfoy feel like a thorn in his back, sitting on pins and needles, and even made him crazy. William's threat to him came true, but he had no way to stop it. Even if he told his father Lucius Malfoy, he couldn't stop the gossip. Even most of the students in Slytherin College were dissatisfied with him. Although Slytherins are always pretentious and arrogant, they will do anything to win. But Malfoy failed, and he was crowned with the title of coward. Not only that, Malfoy's reputation as a coward obviously also affected other Slytherins. In this case, Malfoy finally couldn't stand it. He was born in the pure-blood aristocratic Malfoy family. He was loved by his parents since he was a child, so he developed an arrogant and conceited character. Because of family reasons, he has a deep sense of superiority, and even the 2 followers of the same pure-blood family are arrogant. But now, he can't be arrogant anymore. Coward, coward, these 2 words deeply hurt him. He was only 11 years old. Although he had been influenced by his father since childhood, he did not have the deep mind of his father, Lucius Malfoy. If Lucius Malfoy faced such a situation, he might not be impulsive, because time would eliminate everything. So many things happened in Hogwarts every day, and this rumor would not last long. It would not take long for no one to mention it. Then he would wait for the opportunity to retaliate against William and wash away the shame he had suffered. But Draco was not his father, and he was a little impatient. So, on Tuesday morning, Draco went to William again. Hey, isn't this the coward Master Malfoy? Why are you looking for me again? William spoke in a sarcastic tone, making Malfoy's pale face turn red instantly. He suppressed his anger and said through gritted teeth, Cavendish, don't go too far. Last time I was just haunted by Peeves, I didn't run away. Malfoy made up a lie and made a pale excuse for himself. William sneered. Oh, who would believe such nonsense? You were haunted by Peeves, why didn't you say that you went to stop Voldemort from resurrecting? Malfoy was shocked to hear William's casual complaints about Voldemort. Shut up. I'm not talking to you about this. I want to arrange a wizard duel with you again, this afternoon, in the field outside the castle. William smiled contemptuously and said with a teasing look on his face, Malfoy, you won't run away again, will you? I told you I didn't run away, I was just held back by Peeves. Malfoy argued. Besides, I am a pure-blood wizard from the Malfoy family of the Holy 28. How could I be afraid of a muggle-born wizard like you? Malfoy really wanted to call William a mudblood, but he didn't have the courage to speak. In his heart, William still had some deterrent power. I hope so. I'll wait for you outside the castle for 10 minutes at 4 p.m. Don't let Peeves get to you again. Humph. I'll be there at 4 in the afternoon. Malfoy snorted coldly, turned around and left quickly. Hermione, who had been sitting next to William and had not spoken, said at this time, William, the professor will definitely stop us from dueling in the field in front of the castle. Don't worry, with Malfoy's strength, I won't need a second spell to deal with him. The duel will be over before the professor arrives. William's nonchalant look made Hermione unconsciously stare at him. The morning class ended peacefully, and William once again added more than 10 points for Gryffindor. At lunch, the Weasley twins came to William's side. Boss William, I heard that Malfoy has arranged a wizard duel with you again, is that true? Fred asked with a smile. William was a little surprised and asked, how did you know? George said as a matter of course I heard it from Ron. Oh, I thought Malfoy wanted to prove that he was not a coward, so he spread the word and let you know. What William said gave the Weasley twins an idea. They looked at each other and realized that they had the same idea. However, Fred still asked William, Boss William, are you confident that you can beat Malfoy? If you have confidence, we will help you promote it. If not, we can sell you some props. William curled his lips. Do these two brothers want to have fun or make some money from him? He waved his hand and rejected them. No, I don't want to be treated like a monkey. As for Malfoy, it's not worth mentioning. Okay, but it should be okay for us to go and watch the game, right? George asked with a smile. It's up to you. Can I stop you from watching? That's good. We'll leave first. We still have classes in the afternoon. The Weasley twins left with a smile. There was only one herbology class in the afternoon, and William bought another magical plant from Professor Sprout, which was the feather grass that they studied in class. Feather grass is a small herb with heart-shaped round leaves, hairs on both sides, and fine serrations on the edges. Feather grass is a material for making beauty potions. After class, William did not return to the castle. Instead, after coming out of the greenhouse, he went directly to the venue agreed with Malfoy. Knowing that William was going to duel with Malfoy, Hermione didn't even go to the library, let alone Harry and Ron. The three followed William and sat on the grass waiting for Malfoy to keep the appointment. Not long after, the Weasley twins also ran out of the castle. Boss William, are you really not going to buy some props from us? Fred asked William again as soon as they met. William showed a helpless smile. This guy is really persistent. No, why would I need any props to deal with a mere Malfoy? Humph. Cavendish, everyone can brag, but it depends on whether you have the ability to do it. Malfoy walked over with a sneer on his face. It was obvious that he had heard what William had just said. Behind him were still Goyle and Crabbe, two followers, but next to him was a buck-toothed boy who looked like a 5th or 6th grade student. Flint. Why is he here? The Weasley twins frowned and looked at the buck-toothed boy next to Malfoy. William glanced at Flint casually, then looked at Malfoy who had regained his arrogance. Malfoy, stop talking nonsense, let's start, let's speak with strength. Malfoy stared at William and said, let's set the rules first, so that you won't be dissatisfied when you lose. Cavendish, who is your assistant? Hearing this, William understood that Malfoy had found a senior assistant, so he was full of confidence. But he was blinded by his heart. William's strength was not something Flint could deal with. I don't need an assistant to deal with people like you. William said calmly, not caring about Malfoy's smile of success. Sure enough, Malfoy sneered. You said it yourself, I didn't force you to do it. My assistant is this Marcus Flint. William remained calm when he heard Malfoy's words. He had expected this, but he didn't care. But Hermione and the others were anxious. Malfoy, you are so despicable. You actually asked a senior student to be your assistant. This is not fair to William. Flint, are you shameless enough to bully a first-year student? Flint snorted coldly. We are Slytherin, as long as we win, it doesn't matter what means we use. William waved his hand, smiled and said to Hermione and the others, don't worry, believe me. Hermione pulled William's arm, angrily and said very quickly, William, I know you are very strong, but how long have you studied magic, how can you beat him, don't show off. Harry and Ron were also persuading him, while the Weasley twins stared at Flint, and they were about to fight if they disagreed. Malfoy was still adding fuel to the fire and said with a smile, Cavendish, you are not going to escape from the battlefield, are you? Are you? William ignored Malfoy, but stared into Hermione's eyes, smiled and said, trust me, okay. Hermione looked into the boy's black eyes, which were deep and calm, as if she was facing a senior wizard and it was not worth mentioning at all. She felt that kind of confidence, and she chose to believe him. Hermione let go of William's arm, but still reminded William, be careful. William nodded. Don't worry. Facing Harry and Ron, William was not so gentle. He directly carried them both away, then strode to the center of the venue and looked at Malfoy. Come on, Malfoy, let me see how strong you are and whether you are worthy of your arrogance. Come on, who's afraid of who? Malfoy took out his wand, walked towards William, and stood not far from him. Flint stood aside without moving, and he was stared at by the Weasley twins. No one said start, but the two of them attacked at the same time in tacit understanding. The legs stood stiff and stopped dead. Hualala. William dodged Malfoy's leg-locking curse by slightly turning sideways, and then quickly cast another spell. Tarantella Dance. William didn't want to hurt Malfoy, but he had to teach him a lesson. Malfoy didn't dodge either of his two spells. Malfoy laughed so hard that his whole body went limp, and his legs twitched uncontrollably, as if he had epilepsy. The wand in his hand had been thrown aside, and he couldn't fight back at all. Flint saw this and drew out his wand to remove the spell from Malfoy. But before he could recite the spell, William spoke. I advise you to knock me down first and then remove the curse for Malfoy, otherwise I will attack you by surprise. William said this deliberately, he just wanted Malfoy to enjoy it for a while. But Flint believed it, and looked at William with a very vicious look. Since you are so eager to die, then I will fulfill your wish. Then he waved his wand without hesitation and attacked William. Fall to the ground. Flint's wand shot out a red flash, flying towards William. William reacted very quickly, dodging with one step, and counter-attacking Flint at the same time. All petrified. William's full-body binding spell had no sound or light effects, so it was much more difficult to dodge. Moreover, Flint was a little arrogant in thinking that William, a freshman, could be so powerful. As a result, Flint was defeated by William in one round. His arms snapped to both sides of his body, his legs stood straight, and his whole body became stiff. Then he swayed in place for a few times, and fell to the ground with a plop, looking like a wooden sculpture, hard. This wizard duel started a few minutes later, and William won easily. Hermione rushed over and cheered, William, you won, you really won. Fred and George also exclaimed, how cool. William, you actually defeated a 5th grade student. Harry and Ron looked at William with disbelief and expectation, which was extremely contradictory. In their hearts, William had always been mysterious, knowledgeable and powerful. Although it was incredible that a freshman defeated a 5th-year student, they thought it was reasonable if it was William. William was about to say something modest, but before he could open his mouth, a gloomy voice rang out. Stop the curse. Malfoy's epilepsy was cured, and Flint's restraints were loosened. Snape, dressed in a black robe and with a gloomy face, stood in front of Malfoy and asked coldly. Malfoy, what's going on? Malfoy's face turned pale, and he spoke weakly. Professor, it was Cavendish, he attacked Flint and me. As expected of Slytherin, he confuses right and wrong. Upon hearing this, Snape did not give William a chance to defend himself, and directly confirmed Malfoy's one-sided statement. He looked at William coldly, and said gloomily, Cavendish deliberately hurt his classmates, Gryffindor will be deducted 50 points. Without waiting for William to refute, Snape spoke again. He stared at Harry and said coldly, Potter, you didn't stop Cavendish, Gryffindor will be deducted another 20 points. Hermione retorted angrily, Professor, things are not as Malfoy said, William did not attack them. That's right, William and Malfoy had a fair duel, he didn't launch a sneak attack. Ron and the Weasley twins also spoke up to defend William. Snape didn't listen to them at all. Instead, he stared at them fiercely. For talking back to the professor, Gryffindor will deduct another 10 points. Then he threw away his black robe and turned to leave, but before he left he glared at Malfoy and the others. It seemed that Snape was still very unhappy about Malfoy's loss. Malfoy and the other 4 did not dare to stay any longer, and hurriedly followed Snape with support. William looked at the backs of Snape and Malfoy as they left, and silently made a note of them in his heart. Humph. Snape, we will slowly settle this account later. As for Malfoy, don't blame me, your good days are over. It has been less than 3 weeks since the start of school, and 80 points have been reduced at one time. Gryffindor's house points have returned to the pre-liberation era overnight. However, among William and the others, only Hermione paid more attention to the house points, and the others didn't care at all. Hermione is now a little tearful, she wants to scold, but William is not wrong, it is Snape who is unreasonable. Hermione left William and walked away angrily without saying a word. What's wrong with her? Harry asked. I don't know, maybe he's hungry. William said casually. Oh, I'm a little hungry too. Harry was used to it. It was not the first time that Snape deducted points from him for no reason. Then let's go too. Although they didn't care about the college score, they still felt uncomfortable after being tricked. They returned to the castle in silence. Hermione is working harder now, striving for every opportunity to add points for Gryffindor. Not only that, Hermione will also urge William to work hard for the house points. After all, the points deducted from Gryffindor this time were all caused by them. William prefers Charms class because Professor Freeze really adds points. Oh, well done. Look everyone, Mr. Cavendish has succeeded. 5 points to Gryffindor. Very good. Mr. Cavendish's restoration charm was excellent, 5 points for Gryffindor. As long as he was learning spells, William always got extra points from Professor Freeway. The second was Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration class. Although not as frequent as Professor Freeway, he still got a lot of extra points. What he hated most was Snape. Although he was very serious in every potion class and his operation was impeccable, Snape just didn't give him extra points. Of course, he wouldn't be deducted points, but Harry would always be found out by Snape, and then he would be deducted points. This made all the Gryffindor students hate Snape. It was because he was too biased towards Slytherin. Harry joined the Quidditch house team, and Professor McGonagall gave him a Nimbus 2000, which made Ron envious. However, after joining the house team, he had to spend 3 nights a week on Quidditch training, and Harry looked even more hurried. 2 months passed in a flash. In these 2 months, William's strength has made great progress. By hiring the Weasley twins, William collected some magical creatures, including Nifflers, goblins, auguries, fairies, and vixens. As for other magical creatures, they were not something they could easily get. For this, William paid them almost 80 gold galleons, far exceeding the actual value of these things. But William gained more from these creatures, so he didn't care. In addition to these, William also bought a lot of magical plants from Professor Sprout. After the herbology class that day, William did not buy the magical plants he learned, because Professor Sprout felt that the Devil's Snare was more dangerous and not suitable to sell to him. Since the professor said so, what else could William do but give up? After walking out of the greenhouse, William did not return to the castle, but went to Hagrid's hut. In the past 2 months, William and Hagrid have become familiar with each other. After all, both of them are more interested in magical animals, although William is thinking about collecting, and Hagrid is true love. But there is no obstacle in their communication. Even if it is a collection, it is necessary to know how to take care of them. After William came to Hagrid's hut, Hagrid enthusiastically made him tea and brought his signature rock cake. William, you came at the right time. I was going to write a letter to invite you, but I didn't expect you to come here on your own. Hagrid said excitedly. William smiled slightly and said, that's really a coincidence. Hagrid, do you have anything important to talk to me about? William, I only want to tell you about this, don't tell anyone else. Hagrid said solemnly. Seeing Hagrid so serious, William nodded and assured him, don't worry, I'm the most strict one and I will definitely not tell anyone else. That's good. Hagrid was relieved when he heard William say that. Then he said excitedly, I got a baby mantis cub with a human head and a sphinx body. A man-headed lion-body scorpion-tailed beast. William exclaimed. Keep your voice down. Hagrid looked cautious. It was no wonder William was so surprised. It was because the manticore was so rare. The manticore was an extremely dangerous creature native to Greece. As its name suggests, it has a human head, a lion's body and a scorpion's tail. The Manticore's skin almost rejects all known spells, so it is extremely difficult to control it with magic. Anyone stung by it will die immediately. According to the book, in 1296, a manticore crippled a man but was let go. Because no one knew it, it would be killed. No one dares to approach it. William remembered that when the scorpion was mentioned in the original book, it appeared as a background board for the exploding-tailed scroot. Hagrid led a scorpion and a fire crab crossbreed to give birth to the exploding-tailed scroot. I really don't know how he made these two cooperate obediently. The scorpion he is talking about now is probably the one he will use for crossbreeding in the future. Maybe it was because Hagrid raised it since it was a child that he would cooperate with Hagrid in the future. William had calmed down at this time, and he said, I have seen this creature in the Properties of Things written by Bartholomew Zangorix. The book describes in detail the terrifying features of the manticore beast. It is said to have a red lion body, a human face, human ears and blue eyes, 3 rows of sharp teeth in each upper and lower jaws, and a deadly stinger at the end of its tail like a scorpion, which can be fired in any direction. Hagrid, is it the same as what is written in the book? William asked curiously. Hagrid nodded vigorously. Yes, it is just as you said. William, I can't believe it. You are so knowledgeable that you don't seem like a first-year wizard. William was not at all modest in response to Hagrid's praise. He was indeed knowledgeable. After all, he had obtained all the magical knowledge of Ravenclaw. He looked at Hagrid and asked tentatively, Hagrid, can I see the manticore cub you mentioned? Hagrid agreed without even thinking, of course, but you should look at it from a distance. It is still quite dangerous. No problem. William said cheerfully. Come with me, I'll show you it. Hagrid stood up and walked outside. It seemed that the manticore cub was not here, and William hurriedly followed Hagrid's steps. William thought that Hagrid kept it in the Forbidden Forest, but that was not the case. Hagrid did not take William into the Forbidden Forest, but came to a small hill not far from the cabin. When William got closer, he found that a cave had been dug there. And judging from the appearance of the cave, it was not excavated recently, but had been there for decades. William, this is the inside, follow me in. Hagrid said as he walked in first, and William followed him in. The cave should have been dug by Hagrid. It was more than 4 meters high, but not deep inside. The light from outside shone in, and it was not too dark. In the innermost part of the cave was a fence made of iron pillars that reached the top of the cave. There was a door on the right wall. And at this time, the human-headed sphinx was locked in the fence. William, this is a baby scorpion-tailed beast. Don't get too close to it. Although it's still small, it's very dangerous. William looked at this magical creature. Its appearance was consistent with the description in the book, but it was still small, only the size of a puppy. Any creature looks cute when it is small, and this scorpion-tailed beast is no exception. After William saw it, his curiosity was satisfied, so he asked Hagrid, Hagrid, where did you get this scorpion-tailed beast? I bought this from a Greek guy at the Hog's Head. I also bought a 3-headed dog from him before. Hagrid is a bit honest. He tells William what he wants to tell him. He doesn't keep anything to himself. Is that Greek guy a smuggler of magical creatures? William asked doubtfully. Hagrid shook his head. I don't know. I've only seen him twice, both times in the bar. Do you have his contact information? William asked again. No. Hagrid shook his head. Why are you asking for his contact information? Of course I'll buy him some rare magical creatures, what else can I do? Hagrid scratched his head. I think you should think about this after graduation. Hogwarts prohibits keeping dangerous pets. William was still unwilling to give up. After his persistent questioning, Hagrid finally gave him some useful information. Okay, William, stop talking. Although I don't know the contact information of that Greek guy, I know he often goes to the Hog's Head bar. When I meet him next time, I will definitely ask for his contact information, okay? William nodded with satisfaction. Hagrid, you said it, don't go back on your word. Hagrid said helplessly. I said it, I won't go back on my word. But I think it's better for you not to deal with him. It's too dangerous for you. If you want to buy any magical creatures, I can help you communicate. Hagrid was quite tolerant of William, his friend regardless of age difference, and would consider him. Although William was knowledgeable, Hagrid was still not optimistic about his strength. It was too dangerous for William to deal with wizards of unknown origin, so he offered to be a middleman. William thought about it and felt that this was okay. Anyway, before the 3rd grade, William could not go to Hogsmeade Village, nor could he go to the Hog's Head Inn. So having an agent like Hagrid was indeed a more convenient thing. So he nodded. Okay, then do as you say, Hagrid, you help me communicate. But when William thought of Hagrid's enthusiasm for magical creatures, he immediately said vigilantly, Hagrid, if you encounter a magical creature that we both want, you can't compete with me. When Hagrid heard what William said, his face wrinkled immediately. This was too entangled. After a long while, he finally thought of a way to have the best of both worlds. If this is the case, I won't argue with you, but you have to lend it to me while you're at school. Hagrid felt that he had made a big concession. William thought about it and felt that as long as he had the ownership, it didn't matter who raised it. It would be easier for him if Hagrid raised it. In this case, there was no problem. Sure. Hagrid heaved a sigh of relief when he heard William's affirmative answer. Although Hagrid is a fan of magical animals, especially large ones. But he does not do it for possession, but regards the magical animals as his friends, or even his children. For him, as long as the magical animals live well, he can also give up the pain. After discussing these things, Hagrid asked William, William, what do you want to see me about today? William took a sip of tea to moisten his throat. He was really dry in his mouth from persuading Hagrid. Hearing Hagrid's question, he put down the teacup in his hand, and then he answered, I want to raise a bowtruckle. Hagrid, can you help me find one? A bowtruckle is an animal that guards trees. It has 2 brown eyes and is extremely difficult to see because of its small body and the fact that it appears to be made up of bark and twigs. The bowtruckle is peaceful and extremely shy and feeds on insects. But if the tree it lives in is threatened, it will jump down and pounce on anyone who tries to destroy its home. Moreover, it will use its long and sharp fingers to dig out the eyes of those who destroy its home. Hagrid thought for a moment and said, Bowtruckle. Okay, I can find you one. But do you have the energy to take care of the bowtruckle? I heard that you have many other pets. In response to Hagrid's worry, William smiled and replied, Don't worry, I will definitely take good care of them. Ever since the system rewarded him with a master-level understanding of space magic, coupled with the in-depth study of Ravenclaw's magic knowledge in the past 2 months, his current understanding of space magic has become more and more profound. And as he collects more items, his magic power is getting higher and higher, and his magic power is getting stronger and stronger. Before, he had already cast the Traceless Extension charm to expand the space in the suitcase once. Now, each of his pets has enough space to move around and does not have to be locked in a cage. William plans to expand the space in the suitcase again when he becomes stronger in the future. It seems like a cycle. The larger the space, the more things you can collect. The more things you collect, the stronger you become. The stronger you become, the larger the space. He made an agreement with Hagrid that when he finds the bowtruckle, he will send a letter to William by owl. Then William got up and said goodbye. Before leaving, Brother Hagrid also packed a lot of rock biscuits for him. This has become a habit. Every time William comes to see Hagrid, he leaves. Hagrid would always give William a lot of rock biscuits. At first, William thought Hagrid's rock biscuits were chewy and very good. But after a long time, he got tired of it. Usually he would use a softening spell to soften the rock biscuits, and then eat them as tea or midnight snacks. The next morning, when William woke up from his bed, he smelled a sweet and tempting smell of roasted pumpkin in the corridor. Today is October 31st, the eve of Halloween. Maybe it was because of the holiday, Professor McGonagall did not assign homework in the morning's Transfiguration class for the first time. In the afternoon's Charms class, Professor Flitwick also announced that he thought they could start making objects fly. Ever since the students saw Professor Flitwick make Neville's toad fly all over the classroom, they have been eager to try this skill. Except for William, of course, he had mastered this spell a long time ago. Professor Flitwick divided the class into groups of 2 and began training. William's partner was Hermione, Harry and Seamus were in one group, and Neville and Ron were in one group. Now, don't forget that subtle wrist move we've been training, shrieked Professor Flitwick, standing on his pile of books as usual. Remember, it is very important to recite the mantra correctly. Don't forget the wizard Barufio, who said S instead of F, and found himself lying on the floor with a bison standing on his chest. Professor Flitwick warned us many times, but it was still not easy for most people to do it. Harry and Seamus waved and shook, over and over again, but the feathers that should have been sent into the air by them remained motionless. In a rage, Seamus poked the feathers with his wand, and the feathers caught fire. Harry had to put out the fire with his hat. Ron and Neville at another table didn't look much better. The two waved their wands and shouted, Wingardium Leviosa. But their feathers remained motionless and lay quietly on the table. William and Hermione's group. Before William could make a move, Hermione waved her wand first. Wingardium Leviosa. Their feather rose from the table and hovered 4 feet above their heads. Well done. Professor Flitwick clapped his hands and shouted, Look everyone, Miss Granger has succeeded. Gryffindor adds 5 points for this. Hermione looked at William proudly. Every time it was William who waved his wand, and then Professor Flitwick added points. This time it was her turn. Seeing Hermione's proud look, William just thought she was cute, so he wanted to bully her even more. William also waved his wand, and he didn't even recite a spell. The feathers that were originally controlled by Hermione to float in the air were instantly out of her control. The white feathers seemed to have life and began to fly around Hermione, scratching her ears and swaying in front of her a few times, as if to provoke her, which made Hermione crazy. Professor Flitwick shouted even more excitedly, Oh, what a beautiful silent levitation spell, Mr. Cavendish, you're simply a magical genius. 10 points for Gryffindor. Thank you, Professor. William thanked him and stopped controlling the feather. If he didn't stop, Hermione would get mad. After the spells class, William and his classmates took a flying class. After 2 months of learning, they were all able to fly skillfully on their brooms. So the flying class was basically everyone flying freely. After their second year, they no longer had flying classes because they could bring their own brooms to school. At that time, if they wanted to fly, as long as they had free time, they could fly as long as they wanted. William and Hermione rode on their brooms, chasing each other in the sky, so happy. Hermione had long forgotten the unpleasantness in the spells class. William, I think your flying skills are not worse than Harry's, and even better than Harry's. Professor McGonagall should let you join the Gryffindor team. Hermione said to him with some emotion after she and William landed. After hearing this, William smiled indifferently. He didn't have much interest in Quidditch. Compared to Quidditch, I prefer to go to the library with you to read books. Hearing William's somewhat ambiguous words, Hermione's face turned slightly red, and she walked forward hurriedly in a panic. Little girls are a little thin-skinned. In fact, Hermione also has a good impression of William. After all, most girls admire strong men, and William is that strong man. After the flying class, they had no other classes in the afternoon. Hermione did not show any abnormality, and William was slightly relieved. He did not want Hermione to be attacked by a troll as in the original book, even if she was not injured. But William did not dare to take risks. After all, this is a real world and anything can happen. He dared not bet that Hermione would not be injured, so it is better to avoid dangers that can be avoided as much as possible. In the evening, William deliberately waited for a while in the common room. When he saw Hermione coming out of the girls' dormitory, he stood up and invited her to go to 1A banquet on the eve of St. Mary's Day. Hermione readily agreed, and the two walked downstairs to the hall together. As soon as they entered the hall, they were attracted by the colorful Halloween decorations. 1,000 bats fluttered on the walls and ceiling, and another 1,000 were like low dark clouds, circling above the dining table, making the candle flames in the pumpkin belly flicker. Delicious food suddenly appeared on golden plates, just like at the banquet at the beginning of the last term. William was telling Hermione a joke when Professor Quirrell suddenly rushed into the hall. His big scarf was worn crookedly on his head, and his face was full of fear. Everyone stared at him immediately, and saw him walk to Professor Dumbledore's chair and lean on the table. Then he gasped and said, "The troll, in the dungeon, thought you should know." After saying that, he fell to the floor and passed out. The hall was in chaos. William felt that Quirrell was really a boy who brought fortune, so he accepted the troll. It just so happened that he didn't have any trolls in his collection. Taking advantage of the chaos in the hall, William was about to sneak out. Unexpectedly, as soon as he took a step, he was grabbed by Hermione. "William, where are you going?" "I'm going to the bathroom." William made up an excuse. "Then you should be careful, go and come back quickly." Hermione let go of William, and William quickly got into the crowd and headed out of the hall. The hall was still in a turmoil and chaos. Professor Dumbledore had to make purple fireworks explode from his wand several times before everyone calmed down. "Prefect," he said in a low voice, "take the students from each house to their dormitories immediately." The prefects of each college took action. William had already run out of the hall and walked down the stairs. Quirrell said that the troll was in the underground classroom, so he must go down. After walking a few steps, William smelled a foul smell. It was a mixture of stinky socks and a public toilet that no one had ever cleaned. This was a torture for William, who had a keen sense of smell. Fortunately, he was a wizard and had the magical power of magic. William waved his wand and cast a bubble head spell on himself. A large bubble appeared around his head, and it looked like a goldfish bowl was turned upside down on his head. Although it looked funny, like a celestial dragon, the effect was very good, and the stinking stench was immediately isolated. As soon as he cast the spell on himself, William heard a low muttering and the sound of huge feet dragging on the ground. The sound came from the corridor on William's right, and sure enough, a huge monster appeared in his field of vision. The troll looked to be 12 feet tall, with dull skin and gray like granite. Huge, the stupid body looked like a huge pile of gravel, with a small head like a cocoa bean on top. Its short legs were as thick as a tree stump, and below were flat, rough and calloused feet. It was holding a thick wooden stick in its hand, and because its arms were very long, the stick was dragging on the ground. The moment William saw it, it also noticed William's figure. The giant monster eats raw meat and is not picky about prey. From wild animals to humans, they are all its targets. So, when it saw William, its little head immediately decided to hunt him for food. Although the giant monster is extremely powerful, its weight of more than 1 ton inevitably affects its speed. It may have used its fastest speed to run towards William, but in William's eyes it was still slow. William didn't have time to waste it slowly. He had to catch the giant monster as soon as possible before the professors came. Otherwise, by then, the giant monster would never fall into William's hands again. Thinking of this, William planned to make a quick decision, solve the problem as soon as possible, and escape from the scene of the accident. So when he made a move, he showed no mercy. Fainted. All petrified. 2 consecutive spells hit the giant's body one after another. Bang! The wooden stick in the troll's hand fell into the corridor with a loud noise. Then there was another bang, and the hard troll fell backwards into the corridor. William felt the ground shaking under his feet. In just one round, William easily knocked down the huge troll. But things are far from over. He still has to take the unconscious troll away without being discovered. Fortunately, it was not the first time William moved such a large object, and he already had rich experience. He first cast a super large bubble head spell on the troll, wrapping it completely in a bubble. Then there was another floating spell, controlling the troll to float up and get into his wide sleeves. William's sleeves were caught by him. He cast the Traceless Extension Charm, which was used to cosplay the magical power of sleeves. Isn't this just used now? Although compared with sleeves, it is indeed a world away, but it is useful. After collecting the troll, William also collected its wooden stick, and then quickly left. When he returned to the hall, Percy happened to be walking upstairs with the first-year students of Gryffindor. Hermione looked at the door of the hall frequently with worry in her eyes. But the moment William appeared, Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. William followed the team as if he had never left. But Hermione beside him asked in confusion, "William, why do you smell strange? Is there?" William asked in pretended confusion. It might be because of the contact with the troll just now, and he was contaminated by the stench on it. But if Hermione didn't say it, he really wouldn't have noticed it. Taking this opportunity, William cast a spell on himself to remove the smell from his body. Hermione came close to William again and sniffed hard. This time she nodded with satisfaction. I can't smell it anymore. That's good, William said with a smile. As they returned to the dormitory, Snape hurried to the fourth floor. The other professors went to the underground classroom together to look for the troll. Unfortunately, they were too late and didn't see a hair of the troll. Professor McGonagall looked at Quirrell, and Quirrell sobbed weakly and said, I really saw the troll. Maybe it went to another floor. Professor McGonagall thought about it and felt that it was possible. Although the troll was stupid, it could still do things like going upstairs. We have to find the troll as soon as possible to prevent any students from getting hurt, Professor McGonagall said seriously. The professors then separated to search, and of course Quirrell was in a group with Snape who hurried over. This was also to monitor Quirrell's whereabouts, as Snape was suspicious of Quirrell. On the other hand, William had no idea that the professors were anxiously looking for the troll. When they returned to the Gryffindor common room, the house elves brought up food. Everyone was in high spirits, noisy, and the whole common room was crowded with people. After Hermione finished a pumpkin pie, she asked in confusion, why do you think there was a troll in the dungeon? Maybe it was to create chaos. William casually said his guest answer. Ron also said nonchalantly, it may have been in the underground classroom. There is a room on the fourth floor of the castle on the right corridor with 3 giant dogs. Not many people know about it. Hearing Ron's outspoken words, William knew that it was going to be bad. Sure enough, Hermione looked at Ron in shock. How do you know there are 3 giant dogs there? Then she asked questions like a machine gun. You must have been there. Dumbledore warned you at the beginning of the school year that if you don't want to die in pain, don't enter there. Ron was also annoyed when he heard Hermione's preaching. So what if I've been in there? How come I'm still alive and well? Humph. Mind your own business. Hermione wanted to say something but was quickly stopped by William. If they continued arguing, who knows what hurtful words Ron would say. It seems that some things are hard to change. The quarrel that was destined to happen today was hard to avoid. The few of them parted unhappily, and Ron took Harry back to the dormitory. William stayed beside Hermione, and before William could say anything, Hermione spoke first. William, did you go to the 4th floor as well? William smiled bitterly and nodded. Sure enough, when Hermione saw William nod, she immediately frowned. William, how could you do this? It's okay for you to break some school rules. You will be expelled at most. But there is a solemn warning from Dumbledore, which clearly states that you will die a painful death. You are so irresponsible for your own life. When William heard Hermione say this, he knew that she cared about him, not for the honor and points of Gryffindor. So he didn't get angry, and explained helplessly, Hermione, we didn't mean to break in there at that time. We didn't mean to. Intrusion. Really? Hermione looked at William suspiciously. Of course it's true. The 3 of us ran into Filch and Peeves when we were out for a night out. When we were running away in a panic, we accidentally ran there. And I'll tell you a secret, the 3-headed dog is actually Hagrid's pet, and its name is Fluffy. After listening to William's explanation, Hermione asked in confusion, why would the school lock up such a dangerous 3-headed dog in the castle? William shrugged. It was to protect something valuable. Hagrid once let it slip that Dumbledore borrowed the 3-headed dog to protect something. I see. Hermione nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Just like that, the two chatted until late at night, and the number of people in the common room gradually decreased. Until finally there were only the 2 of them. Hermione was shocked, and hurriedly said good night to William, and ran back to the dormitory to rest. When William returned to the dormitory, Harry and the others were already asleep in bed. There was Snape's potions class tomorrow morning, and no one dared to be late for his class, otherwise they would be scolded by him. If Gryffindor students were late, Snape would taking the opportunity to deduct a few more points from the college. So, they all went to bed early, fearing that they would get up late the next day. William did not have this kind of distress. He always got up on time in the morning, even if he slept a little late. Pulling out the suitcase from under the bed, William got in with ease. The space in the suitcase was expanded by William, and it was no longer the same as the previous 3-bedroom apartment. The space inside is now as big as a football field, except that the layout of the previous rooms has not changed. William also added a botanical garden and a zoo, and the botanical garden is planted with his collection of herbs. And in the zoo, there are those magical creatures he collected. William divided it into blocks, letting them occupy their own positions in it to prevent them from fighting each other. Although he is not as professional as Newt Scamander, William has done his best to provide the best environment for these animals and plants. William walked into the zoo, to an open space where magical creatures had not yet been placed, and flicked his sleeves. The next moment, a huge monster fell on the open space, with a bang, and the ground shook. It was the troll that William caught from the corridor. Originally, there was a giant bubble head spell on it to isolate the stench. But after being thrown like this, the bubble head spell broke, and at the same time, a foul smell instantly filled the air. William cast a bubble head spell on himself, and then looked at the unconscious troll. He was a little troubled. He couldn't let it be unconscious all the time, and William didn't have time to keep casting the bubble head spell on it. William frowned and thought for a while, and felt that it was better to let it clean up first. Otherwise, this place will probably stink in the future, and even other magical animals will suffer. Clear water like a spring. William's wand tip sprayed a stream of water, which directly began to wash over the giant monster. After washing it repeatedly for several times, William finally stopped. Clean it up. The surrounding water stains and mud disappeared immediately, but William did not stop, and cast another descaling spell on the troll. Then the troll was seen to be much cleaner in an instant. Not only that, but a lot of pink soap bubbles came out of its mouth. After solving the hygiene problem of the troll, William had to think about how to control it from causing damage. Otherwise, the things in the suitcase would be smashed to pieces by the troll. After thinking about it, he still had to use the Imperious Curse, one of the 3 unforgivable curses. This trick is the safest, and William has a master-level understanding of soul magic, and is very good at this trick. Although he has never used this magic, there is a first time for everything, right? The soul is out of the body. William removed the binding spell on the troll, and then used a quick resuscitation to wake the troll up. Looking at the obedient troll in front of him, William showed a satisfied smile. System: collect this giant monster. Ding. Collect the extraordinary 6-star magical beast giant monster. Reward the host with magic +6, money +3,200 galleons, talent, infinite strength. In an instant, William felt that his whole body was filled with explosive power. Although his strength was already great before, it felt even stronger now. William clenched his fists and resisted the desire to destroy. System: open my attribute panel. Although I felt that my strength had increased a lot, I didn't have a direct feeling of how much it had increased. So it was best to look at the data on the attribute panel. Host: William Cavendish. Constitution: 80. Strength: 99. Agility: 70. Spirit: 85. Magic: 87. Skills: Art Appreciation, Advanced, Horsemanship, Master, Fighting, Master, Shooting, Advanced, Spellcasting Skills, Master, Space Magic, Master, Soul Magic, Grandmaster, Alchemy, Advanced. Note: skill levels are divided into elementary, intermediate, advanced, master, grandmaster, and legendary levels. Spells: a large number of spells. Talents: night vision, flexible long tongue, deformation, onomatopoeia, weather prediction, augury, treasure hunting, niffler, digging, goblin, infinite strength, troll. Items: basic spells collection, traceless stretch suitcase, several potions. William looked at the attribute panel and found that not only did his strength increase by more than 20 points, but even his physique and speed had increased to varying degrees. This infinite strength talent really should not be underestimated. Compared to before, William's current panel can be said to be very luxurious. And the magic value has also caught up, and it has balanced a lot of other data. With my current magic power, I should be about the same as the Deans. Although William said so, he was a little unsure before they actually fought. Forget it, as long as I keep working hard, there will be a day when I will be invincible. William encouraged himself, then ordered the troll not to run around and destroy things, and turned to leave the suitcase. After entering November, the weather became very cold. The mountains around the school were gray and covered with ice and snow, and the lake was as cold and hard as quenched steel. Every morning, there was frost on the ground. From the upstairs window, you can see Hagrid, who was wrapped in a long moleskin coat, wearing rabbit fur gloves and huge beaver fur boots, defrosting the flying broom on the Quidditch field. The Quidditch season has begun. There will be a game on Saturday between Gryffindor and Slytherin. If Gryffindor wins, their ranking in the College Cup Championship will rise to second place. The school began to be filled with a passion, and there were voices discussing Quidditch everywhere. In this atmosphere, William also found a copy of Magical Quidditch, and planned to learn more about this sport. If he found the book quite interesting. William learned from the book that there are 700 fouls in Quidditch games. And they all appeared in a World Cup match in 1473. Seekers are usually the smallest and fastest players, and the most serious Quidditch accidents seem to happen to them. Although few people die in Quidditch games, it is said that referees often disappear without a trace, only to reappear in the Sahara Desert a few months later. As the secret weapon of the Gryffindor team, Harry was forced by Wood to seize every minute to practice Quidditch. So, if all the time is used for training, then there is definitely no way to do homework seriously. At this time, he felt very fortunate that he had William as a friend. As a top student, William often hung out in the library with Hermione, and of course he finished his homework early. So, when Harry said shamelessly, "Godfather, can you lend me your homework to copy?" What could William do? Of course I agreed to it, after all, he called me Godfather. But even though Harry paid so much, unfortunate things still happened. The news that Harry was going to be the Seeker was finally leaked out. As a result, some people told him that he would be a great player. Others said that they would have to hold up the mattress and run after him to prevent him from falling. Harry didn't know which one was worse. Seeing that he was a little anxious, William lent him the book, Magical Quidditch, that he had already finished reading. "Harry, this is your first time competing, no matter what the result is, you are already great. I'll lend you this book. It will be helpful for you to learn more about the rules of Quidditch." William's caring brother's appearance touched Harry so much that he almost called him Godfather again. Saturday came quickly. It was a clear and cold morning, and the restaurant was filled with the tempting smell of grilled sausages. Everyone was looking forward to a wonderful Quidditch game, and everyone was chatting happily. "Harry, you have to eat some breakfast." "I don't want to eat anything." "Have some toast," Ron advised. "I'm not hungry." Harry felt terrible. In an hour, he would be on the court. "Harry, you need to keep your strength up." Seamus said, "The Seeker is always the one the other side focuses on." "Thank you, Seamus," Harry said as he watched Seamus slathering ketchup on his sausages. William had noticed Harry's nervousness, but he didn't do anything to comfort him. Because William felt that this was all he had to go through and he had to overcome it on his own. By 11 o'clock, it seemed that all the teachers and students in the school had come to the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students brought binoculars. The seats were almost raised halfway into the air, but sometimes it was still difficult to see the game clearly. William and Hermione came to the highest row and joined Ron, Seamus, Dean and Neville. To give Harry a surprise, they used a bed sheet that was soiled by the little mouse spotted to draw a huge banner with the words "Potter will win." Dean, who is good at painting, also drew a big Gryffindor lion below. Seeing this, Hermione cast a clever spell on it, making the paint on the banner flash different colors. Then she looked at William proudly, as if to say that his magic was powerful. William smiled, gave a thumbs up and praised, "Hermione, you are getting better and better. What kind of magic is this? I don't even know it." Hearing William's words, Hermione became even more proud. "Of course, I learned this from the selected 18th century spells. Look, they're coming out. Madame Hooch is the referee for this match. She stands in the middle of the field with her broomstick in hand. Listen, I want everyone to play fair and honest." She spoke as soon as the players from both houses gathered around her. And Madame Hooch's eyes were mainly on the captain of the Slytherin team, and it seemed that she was specifically targeting him. The captain of the Slytherin team was the fifth-year student Marcus Flint, who had been Malfoy's assistant in the duel with William. "Everyone please get on your broomsticks." Madame Hooch blew her silver whistle. 15 broomsticks took off and rose high into the sky. The race began. The quaffle was immediately snatched up by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What a great chaser she was, and very attractive too. Jordan. I'm sorry, Professor. Lee Jordan, as the commentator of this game, was closely monitored by Professor McGonagall. As a friend of the Weasley twins, it is conceivable that Lee Jordan's character is the same as the Weasley twins, and they both like to do unexpected things. Quote. She was really running all the way up there, and she made a beautiful pass to Alia Spinett, who was a talent discovered by Oliver Wood and was just a substitute last year. Lee Jordan passionately explained the game on the field. The ball was passed to Johnson again, and then, oh no, the Slytherin team took the quaffle. On the field, Marcus Flint, the captain of the Slytherin team, got the quaffle and ran directly towards the Gryffindor goal post. It must be said that Marcus Flint is quite capable to be the captain of the Slytherin team. He dodged the bludgers and 2 Gryffindor players in succession, and then threw the quaffle directly at the goal. But Gryffindor's goalkeeper, Oliver Wood, is also the captain of the house team, and his strength should not be underestimated. With a beautiful move, he intercepted the ball. Being in this stadium with an explosive atmosphere, William was inevitably affected, and he shouted with Hermione and others, cheering for Gryffindor. Lee Jordan's voice echoed in his ears. Now it was Gryffindor's turn to take the ball. That was Gryffindor chaser Katie Bell, flying across the pitch, darting nimbly around Flint. Ouch! That must have hurt, getting hit in the back of the head by a bludger. The Gryffindor chaser was hit by a bludger, and the quaffle in his hand was snatched away by the Slytherin. Adrian Poos from the Slytherin team rushed towards the goal post quickly, but unfortunately, he was also knocked down by another bludger. The Gryffindor beaters were the Weasley twins. They looked exactly the same, and even their friend Lee Jordan couldn't tell them apart. So when mentioning them, he always said, Fred or George, those 2 twins are really hard to tell apart. Johnson had the quaffle back, and with nothing to oppose her she was running as fast as she could, flying like a bludger, and the goalpost was just ahead. Come on. Well, Angelina, keeper Bletchley dives, misses, Gryffindor scores. Lee Jordan's stirring voice and the cheers of the Gryffindors echoed in the cold air. Mixed in with the roars and groans of the Slytherins were, lend me some light, let me pass. Hagrid. William and Hermione squeezed each other to make room for Hagrid to sit in. I was just looking in my little room. Hagrid said, patting his huge telescope. But it's different from watching the game in the crowd. The snitch is nowhere to be seen, right? William nodded. No, I haven't seen it. Harry has nothing to do now. As long as you don't get into trouble, you're lucky. Hagrid said, raising his telescope and looking hard at a small dot in the sky. That was Harry. Harry was very high in the sky, gliding lightly above the playing field, squinting his eyes to search for the shadow of the snitch. This was part of the game plan he and Wood had made. The Gryffindor and Slytherin teams on the field chased each other and stole the ball from each other. The game was very intense. At this moment, a flash of golden light appeared, and the snitch appeared. There was a whisper in the crowd. Harry saw the snitch, and he was excited. He dived down and chased the golden light. Slytherin Terrence Higgs, the team's seeker, saw it too, and the 2 flew side by side towards the snitch. The chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to do, and they hovered in the air, watching. Harry was faster than Higgs, and he could see the small ball, flapping its wings, flying ahead, and he suddenly increased his speed. Bang! Marcus Flint deliberately bumped into Harry, and Harry's broomstick suddenly deviated from its direction, but Harry held onto it tightly. Marcus Flint's behavior caused an angry roar from the Gryffindors. Foul! Foul! Madam Hooch angrily scolded Flint, and then ordered the Gryffindor team to take a free kick in front of the goalpost. But, of course, in the chaos, the golden snitch disappeared from sight again. In the stands, Dean Thomas shouted, "Send him off, referee." Red card. William kindly reminded, "This is not football, Dean. In Quidditch, you can't send people off the field." Then William added, "But I think they should change the rules of the game." Hagrid also agreed with William's words. Indeed, Flint almost knocked Harry down in the air. As a Gryffindor, it was difficult for Lee Jordan to be impartial. He only heard him say, "So, after that obvious and despicable cheating. Jordan." Professor McGonagall roared. "I mean, after that public and offensive foul. Jordan, I remind you." Okay. Flint almost killed the Gryffindor seeker. I believe this kind of thing happens to everyone, so Gryffindor takes a free kick. Lee Jordan's sarcastic voice made William appreciate this guy a little. The game continued, and Gryffindor still controlled the ball. Just as Harry dodged another bludger that was spinning and brushing his scalp, an accident happened. His broom suddenly shook terribly. For a moment, he thought he was going to fall. He grabbed the broom handle tightly with both hands and clamped it tightly with his knees. He had never felt so scared. Then things got out of control. His broom was completely out of control. He couldn't control it at all. The broom turned left and right in the air, and it swayed violently from time to time, almost knocking him off it. William noticed Harry's abnormality at the first time, and he began to search for Quirrell in the crowd. Harry's broom was twitching and twisting wildly, slowly and steadily moving higher and higher away from the playing field. I don't know what Harry wants to do, Hagrid muttered. If I didn't know him so well, I'd think he couldn't control his broom, but he can't be that way. William didn't know whether Hagrid was careless or stupid. William said solemnly, "Someone is doing something bad." He cast a spell on Harry's broom. "Impossible." Hagrid's voice trembled slightly. "Nothing can interfere with a flying broom except powerful dark magic, and a child cannot perform such magic on the Nimbus 2000. William curled his lips and retorted, "If it weren't a child, would it be possible?" Hearing this, Hermione grabbed Hagrid's telescope. She didn't look up at Harry, but looked at the crowd anxiously. William had locked Quirrell's position at this time. He stood up and walked quickly in Quirrell's direction. Hermione also discovered something at this time. She put down the telescope in her hand and said angrily, "I knew it was Snape. He was doing something bad and cursing the broom." "What now?" Ron asked. "Watch me." Before Ron could say another word, Hermione disappeared. Ron pointed the telescope at Harry again. Harry's situation was even more dangerous at this time. His broomstick began to tumble and roll non-stop, and Harry could only barely hold on to avoid falling. Suddenly, the broomstick twisted wildly again, and Harry was thrown off by it. He now held the broom handle with only one hand, hanging in the air. William quickly passed through the crowd and came to Quirrell. At this time, Quirrell's attention was on Harry, and he was muttering silently. William calmly walked over from the row of seats behind him, and then deliberately bumped into Professor Quirrell accidentally. Quirrell was knocked headfirst to the front row, and the sudden accident forced him to stop the spell in his mouth. But that was enough. In the air, Harry was suddenly able to climb back on his broom. After solving the problem, William turned around and prepared to go back directly, but met Hermione head-on. Before William could speak, Hermione pulled William and whispered, "William, you also found out that Snape was doing bad things, right?" Although William knew that Snape was helping Harry, he did not explain, but nodded affirmatively. "That's right, Hermione, I found out that he was the one who was doing the trick, and I was just about to interrupt him while he was chanting the spell." After William finished speaking, he pulled Hermione and squatted down behind the seat. "Let me do it," Hermione said excitedly. "All right." William nodded. Hermione drew her wand and whispered a few carefully considered words, and bright blue flames leapt out of her wand and rushed towards the hem of Snape's robes. After a while, Snape realized that he was on fire. William and Hermione heard a scream and knew that the matter was almost over, so they hurried back along the row of seats. Snape would never know what happened. When William and Hermione returned to Hagrid, they smiled and high-fived each other, showing a tacit understanding. At the same time, Harry in the sky suddenly dived rapidly towards the ground. People saw him covering his mouth with his hands, as if he was going to vomit. He fell to the ground on all fours, coughing, and a golden object fell into his palm. "I caught the snitch," he shouted and waved the ball high above his head. The game ended in chaos. Gryffindor won by 170 points to 60 points. After the game, Hagrid invited William and the others to his place. As soon as they sat down, Hagrid was busy making tea. Ron said indignantly, "It was Snape who did it. I saw it all. He was casting a spell on your broomstick," muttering to himself, "and his eyes were fixed on you." Nonsense. Hagrid knew nothing about what was happening around him on the stands. Why would Snape do such a thing? Hermione argued, but the fact is that when Snape stopped chanting, Harry's broom returned to normal. Doesn't this prove that he did it? I'm telling you, you're wrong. Hagrid still didn't believe Snape did it. I don't know why Harry's broomstick behaved like that, but there is no way Snape would want to kill a student. Although Harry didn't know why Hagrid trusted Snape so much, he didn't have any good feelings towards Snape. Harry was convinced that Snape wanted to harm him. After all, Snape's targeting of him was too obvious. At this moment, William, who had been silent, suddenly interrupted and said, "In fact, there was another person who was staring at Harry and chanting a spell at the time." William's words successfully attracted everyone's attention, and Harry hurriedly asked, "William, who is that person?" "Chilo. Quirrell." Harry and the others were a little surprised. After all, according to the abilities Quirrell usually showed, he had no ability to control Harry's broom. This professor of defense against the dark arts has never used any magic in class. He even stutters and looks weak and vulnerable. So, they were all very surprised when William said Quirrell's name. William nodded affirmatively. "Yes, it's Quirrell." Ron frowned and said, "Is it possible that Professor Quirrell is helping Harry?" "So, Snape might be helping Harry, too." Hagrid also said. "I don't know about that." William shrugged. "You guys should find out the truth yourself." Harry felt confused. Why was it so confusing? Who wanted to harm him? Hermione was also confused, but after thinking for a moment, she reminded Harry. "Harry, whether it is Quirrell or Snape, you should be careful with both of them. After all, either of them may be the one who wants to harm you." "That's right, Hermione makes sense." Harry nodded, but his expression was very sad. Well, he didn't know how he offended these two, and he suffered this unprovoked disaster. He was just crying without tears. After saying goodbye to Hagrid, William and the other two returned to the castle with heavy hearts. William was thinking that with his meddling, Voldemort would not really get the Philosopher's Stone, should he stop it then. Harry and the other two had similar ideas, all thinking about Snape and Quirrell. However, when they returned to the Gryffindor common room, these thoughts were instantly gone. Because everyone was celebrating the victory of the Quidditch game, the atmosphere was very noisy. And Harry, the great hero, was even more popular. William felt a little envious, wondering if he should also join the Quidditch team and do as the Romans do. But after just thinking about it, he gave up the idea. He might not have so much time and energy to allocate to Quidditch. Recently he has been fascinated by alchemy. At dinner in the evening, Harry saw Snape limping. Although he had noticed it yesterday, he didn't think much about it at the time. After what happened today, and knowing from William and the others that Snape and Quirrell might want to kill him, Harry was more concerned about Snape's behavior and why he was limping. So, when Snape finished dinner and left the restaurant, Harry put down his food and hurriedly followed him. Snape limped back to the staff room, and Harry followed him stealthily. Suddenly, Harry heard footsteps approaching slowly, and he hurriedly found a hidden place to hide and secretly observe the situation outside. The person who came was Filch, who had some bandages in his hand. Harry saw Filch knock on the door of the staff room, and Snape's voice came from inside, "Come in." Filch pushed the door and walked in. Harry hurried out of his hiding place and approached the door carefully. Harry found that the door of the staff room was not closed tightly, so he leaned forward to the crack and looked inside. What he saw was a horrible scene. There were only Snape and Filch in the room. Snape had lifted his robe above his knees. One of his legs was covered in blood and flesh, and Filch was handing him a bandage. Snape said, "How could you keep an eye on 3 heads at the same time?" Harry was startled when he heard this and planned to leave. But it was too late. Snape inside had already discovered him. "Potter." Snape quickly put down his robes to cover his injured leg. His face was twisted with anger. Harry felt that he couldn't breathe. "Professor, I." Before Harry could find an excuse, Snape roared, "Get out! Get out!" Harry didn't wait for Snape to deduct points from Gryffindor, and he ran all the way up the stairs. "Harry, have you been chased by a dog? Why are you running so fast?" William, who met Harry in front of the fat lady's portrait, laughed and teased. Harry was panting and his words were a little unclear. William patted him on the shoulder. "Okay, don't talk for now, go in and take a rest first." Hermione stepped forward and gave the fat lady a command, revealing the hole behind the portrait, and the 3 of them went in one after another. Harry sat in the armchair to rest for a while, and then he told her everything he had just seen. "Do you know what this means?" Finally, He held his breath and said, he wants to pass by the three-headed giant dog. He is looking for the thing that the big dog is guarding. And I guess it should be the day before Halloween 2 days ago. The troll appeared without any warning that day. He must have released it to divert people's attention. William's eyes were wide open and his mouth was slightly open. He didn't expect things to develop to this point. The grudge between Harry and Snape is really tangled. He has already dragged Quirrell into it, but Harry finally chose to doubt Snape. This may be the fate. Even this time, even Hermione agreed with Harry's inference. After all, during the day, Snape's behavior did seem to be harming Harry. Of course, Ron, who heard the news just after returning from dinner, was also very worried. I think it's him, but what is Snape looking for? What is the big dog guarding? Find a chance to ask Hagrid. He was the one who lent the big dog to Dumbledore, he must know something. When William went to bed, he was still thinking in his mind, is there an invisible hand in this world that controls everything? Those things that go off track will eventually be brought back on track by this invisible hand. But in his heart, William always believed that man can conquer nature, and strength is the foundation of everything. The next day was Sunday, and William received a letter from Hagrid inviting him, who helped William find a bowtruckle. Harry also wanted to ask Hagrid some questions, so the four of them came to Hagrid's hut again. Hagrid was still so enthusiastic, making tea for them and serving them the rock cakes he made himself. William couldn't wait to ask, Hagrid, where is the bowtruckle you mentioned? Seeing William so anxious, Hagrid laughed. William, don't worry, you need to prepare some things first, otherwise the bowtruckle won't go with you. Don't worry, Hagrid, I've prepared it. William said as he took out a glass jar from his sleeve, which was full of ground turtles. Ground turtles are the favorite food of bowtruckles. If you give a bowtruckle ground turtles, it will be comforted for a long time. Seeing that William was already prepared, Hagrid nodded with satisfaction. Then he took down a small twig-like bowtruckle from his collar. It was very small, and it looked no bigger than one of Hagrid's fingers. Its two small brown eyes stared at the glass jar in William's hand. Seeing its eager little eyes, William couldn't help but open the glass jar and handed it over. Harry and the others also gathered around curiously. They should have never seen such a magical creature as the bowtruckle. Under the temptation of William's jar of ground turtles, the bowtruckle soon fell and became William's pet. After looking at the bowtruckle for a while, Harry finally asked Hagrid his own question. Hagrid, I found out something about Snape. He was bitten by that big three-headed dog. We think he was trying to steal something the dog was guarding. That big dog should be the three-headed dog Fluffy you mentioned earlier. Hagrid, can you tell me what it is guarding? Hearing Harry's words, Hagrid put down the teapot heavily. Don't you want to die? Fluffy is very dangerous to you, and he is guarding a top secret, so don't ask nonsense questions, okay? Hagrid's rude words did not make Harry restrain himself at all. He said anxiously, but Snape wanted to steal it. Hagrid said firmly, nonsense. Snape is a teacher at Hogwarts, he would never do such a thing. Then why was he bitten by the three-headed dog? Harry asked loudly. Hagrid said irritably, this is none of your business. Now, listen to me, all of you. You are interfering in things that have nothing to do with you. This is very dangerous. Forget the big dog, forget what it's guarding, this is the difference between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha. So this involves a man called Nicholas Flamel, right? Hagrid was furious when he heard this. He was angry with himself. William hadn't spoken a word, but the corners of his mouth twitched. Hagrid must have grown up drinking truth serum, and he would tell the truth. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.